Hello, hello, hello. How are you? Welcome. I hope everybody's doing really well. Okay, seems like I'm in focus. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live stream. I hope everybody is having a great day. We're here, we're hanging out, and hopefully the volume's okay. Yeah, it seems like it's okay. Music's a little bit loud in my ears, but that's all right. Patrick, how are you doing? Welcome. We win 1 year's worth of subs. We win. Thank you. How are you? I really appreciate that, we win. By the way, I saw your message. Laughing face. I saw your message about the package and the candy being expired, and that sucks. that would be so heartbreaking, because like when Nikki sent me stuff, the candy she sent me was like the best part. I mean, I liked everything she gave me, but like the candy was... Oh, there's some stuff that she sent me that I just absolutely loved. I hope you're doing really well. Oh, Conan Exiles. I've heard... At first, I heard, like, bad things about it, and then it apparently got a lot better over the years. How do you like the game? Inuyugi, nice to see you. Snowy Fox Play, hello to you. The Darkest Fog, hello to you as well. So, I'm gonna apologize from the start. I am not very energetic today. I slept, like, 3 hours... maybe 4, because so I have tinnitus, and if you don't know what tinnitus is, it's like, or tinnitus depending on how you pronounce it, it's like a constant ringing in your ears, and so I have permanent tinnitus because, you know, I was a musician for like 15 years, and with loud brass and a Latin band behind you, it causes a lot of damage. Plus, my parents used to go to live concerts and take us along when we were kids to a lot of Latin stuff, like Latino music and stuff, and so my ears are damaged. I wouldn't be surprised if I actually have some hearing loss because I do have a hard time when there's background noise distinguishing when someone's talking to me. It's kind of hard for me. And same with music. I can listen to music, but I can't hear the lyrics. And so I have constant ringing in my ears, but most of the time my brain just kind of ignores it, and I'm okay unless I pay attention to it. But last night I got woken up, or this morning I got woken up because the ringing in my ear got so severe that it actually sounded like there was an alarm ringing in the house. Like a loud beep was just going in the house. The thing is, I sleep with earplugs in, because noise bothers me, and so I sleep with earplugs in, and I could hear the ringing despite wearing earplugs. So in my mind, it was something really loud was ringing, if it was loud enough to wake me up through my earplugs. And I took my earplugs off, and it was still the same thing. But once I took my earplugs off and the fan hit my face, and it was like hitting my ear, the ringing got really, really quiet. And then once I turned off the fan, I could hear it again. It was almost like the sound of the fan was kind of muting out the sound of the ringing. And it finally stopped ringing in my ears about an hour ago. but it was just this really obnoxious ringing in my right ear. It was really frustrating. But anyways, so I didn't sleep because I woke up to the ringing. And so I'm really tired, really low energy today. So I will do my best to be conversational and high energy, but I may just be completely zoned out for a bit. So I apologize ahead of time. Busy with work. No worries. I totally get it. A lot of my viewers, Patrick, started watching my show when they were in their mid to late teens. Some were in like their early 20s. Almost all of them were in school, and now a few years have gone by and most of them have finished school or working full-time. So a lot of people hang out very, very less often than they used to. There's some people that used to be at every stream, all stream long, super chatty, and now like I see them maybe once every couple of months. They'll pop in and lurk, or they'll say hi and then they leave because they have full-time jobs and are grown adults with responsibilities now. They can no longer be teenagers or young adults that are, you know, living off mom and dad. They now have to be responsible for themselves. So I totally get it. It's kind of the vibe of what happens as a streamer, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is, you know. Patrick, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate that. Yeah, Snowy Foxy play. So Snowy Fox play. I'm glad to be streaming. Glad to be streaming. Darkest Fog, yes, I did say hi to you. I did say hi to you. But outside of Conan as well, it's a lot of fun for me, especially together, friends in the hubby. So I've never played the game We Win. And the reviews that I watched, it wasn't really like a review of that game. It was just, it was in the news because of like the, that's the one with customization where you could like choose the size of their bratwurst, right? That's the game. So I know it's like a survival game. It's similar to like Ark, right? In like the survival aspect of it, I think. But yeah. Anyways, as far Future, hello, nice to see you. Welcome. If you see me talking, Future, I think yeah, you can see it like right on my face. That's TikTok. That's YouTube and Twitch. That's who you'll see chatting. So you can kind of keep track of what I'm responding to. Yeah, it's based off Conan the Barbarian. Yeah. Like I said, I've never played it. It looked interesting, but it was all over video gaming news because of that specific feature, which I thought was hilarious. Yes, Patrick, it's been a while. It's been at least a year since you and I have spoken, because I know I took like a year off streaming, and I don't think you've been back since I came back to streaming. But the last time I was streaming, if you don't follow my TikTok, I had no hair. And so I did a brand deal with Lord Hair. Can you see it in this image? You can't. The sign is over there. It's right next to the cup. You can't actually see it. I can turn the camera for a second. It might turn the camera off though. Ooh, there it is. Lord Hair, right there. It's hard to do off camera. There we go. Lord Hair, right there. They are a hair system company, is what they're called. So basically, what they do is they sell wigs for men. And so this is a wig. And so I got in contact with them, and then they liked my channel and stuff, and so they asked if I would like to promote them. And so they sent me out a hair system to wear. It seems like the community of men who wear this have kind of moved away from the word wig or toupee. It's still the proper word, but it's what they've moved away from, because there's this idea that wigs are what you see like the comedians wear, you know, in like the little bits on TikTok or YouTube where they wear like the really bad fake plastic wig and it's like really obvious, or you see like the 50-year-old guy who's like all gray, but then he's got like the black wig on top of his head and it looks really obvious. So they've moved away from that and moved towards calling it more a hair system. The big difference is old wigs were made of fake plastic synthetic hair, and these are made of real hair. And this one in particular is handmade, so they actually like individually knot every single hair that's on this thing. And as you can tell, it looks pretty natural. I think it looks pretty spot on. And so yeah, so I promote them. If anybody is looking to get one, if you go to lordhair.com and you use code retro, you get $20 off. So but yeah, so I did it because I had been looking into actually getting the surgery done, and one, I'm not a great candidate for it, and two, it's very expensive, And 3, you have to keep doing it every few years, so it just continuously is very expensive, whereas this is much more affordable. It's instant. I can remove it if I don't like it, if I change my mind, if I can't afford to get a new one. Like, let's say, you know, I hit a hard time and I can't buy a new one for a little while, I can just take it off, shave my head, and just go back to my regular look. And then when I have the money, I can just go back to this look. Whereas like transplant, if you can't get the transplant updated, I guess would be the word, it's going to be very obvious where you have like thick hair that they've put in and then you're starting to bald further back and you can't do anything to fix it. And it's a lot easier to come up with like $300 versus like $10,000. So there's a lot more freedom with this. Obviously there are downsides to it. It wears down, you have to replace it. There's maintenance that you have to do to it. You know, it's not your natural hair, so there are certain steps. Everything's got its plus and minuses, but that's why I look so different, because I have hair now, which has made a big difference for the way that I look. You would have never said it wasn't my real hair. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. The last system I had, because this is my second one, the last system that I had, and this isn't a reflection on Lord Hair or anything like that, but basically I've never worn one. I was very into taking care of my hair when I was younger, but once I started losing my hair, I never really paid attention to my hair. And when I was younger, you know, the internet wasn't as mainstream as it is now. There wasn't as much information as there is now, so I didn't know what my hair color was. I didn't know how thick my hair was. I didn't know any of that. It was just kind of a guess on my side. So the contact that I have at Lord Hair, I sent them a bunch of pictures and I was like, this is what I looked like when I had a full head of hair. Take a guess at what you think this would be for me. And so he sent me a system, and it was slightly too thick and slightly too dark. And so it looked okay. It looked very natural on camera. In real life, it was slightly too dark and too thick. So it was just obvious enough that it made people, at least it made people think that I dyed my hair. So when I got the stylist to put it in and everything, he suggested a few different settings, a few different choices to make, and so I switched it up. Now this one I feel looks incredibly natural. When I look at myself in the mirror, I don't notice it, whereas the other one I could kind of tell. More than anything, I could tell in the other one when I was walking at work. Work has a bunch of glass panes in the front, and I work at night, so it's reflective, and I would be working and I would catch myself in the reflection with the corner of my eye, and the first thing I would notice is the hair. The reflection was obviously not a clear reflection, so, and I'd be quite a distance away, but I would notice the hair immediately. Now I don't notice the hair at all. So I feel like this is a much closer fit. My natural hair is darker than the system is, but I have like a weird hair color because the next step up is the very dark one, and this one is the more brown one, and my hair falls right in between. My hair is very black, but because my scalp is so pale, it makes my hair look lighter, and the hair system that is very black looks artificial as far as like how black it is in comparison to my scalp. Whereas this one is more of a brown hue, so it looks more natural, but it's still slightly too light for my hair. So like I have to keep my hair short, my natural hair short, to kind of fight back against the unnatural match. Unless I want to dye everything, and it's just too much money, too much work. But yeah, I think it looks pretty good. I think it's pretty natural, you know? I'm pretty proud of it. Like, I think it looks good. Like, this part's all my natural. You can kind of... Can you tell on camera? It's hard to tell on camera because of the way that I have the settings, but like, all this is my natural hair. The wig actually starts way up here. This is part of the wig that's, like, been put over, but, like, that's all my natural hair. You can see my scalp. Mind you, with the wig, if I turn around, you can still see my scalp. These systems are great. Like, they're really, really natural looking. I kind of messed up the front hairline a little bit when I was putting it on, doing maintenance on it. Lining it up is a bit of a nightmare if you're not very well practiced, and I'm still learning. I've been doing this for about 3 months now, so I'm still learning the routine that works the best for me. So what I've done to kind of make my life easier is actually do it in steps. For those who don't know, I have to actually physically shave the top of my head so it glues on, and then I can shower with this. I showered today, fully washed the hair and everything, didn't take it off, and it's just fine. The thing is that when I am trying to do maintenance on my own, it's very hard to get it straight. So sometimes I end up with it kind of tilted a little bit, and then I end up with like a receding hairline on one side and way too short on the other. So what I've been doing is I actually like unstick the front, shave the front, do the maintenance on the front, then the next day I unstick the back and do the maintenance in the back. That way I get all the maintenance done, but I don't have to actually fully take it off, and it stays fairly lined up. The thing is that the last time that I did it, I didn't put the tape close enough to the hairline, so the hairline is just slightly messed up. Nothing noticeable. It's just noticeable to me, especially when I pull my hair back. I can kind of feel it a bit. But I think it looks pretty good. I think it looks pretty natural. I feel... here's a misconception that a lot of people have. Some people do it for confidence, don't get me wrong. But people think that guys who do this automatically are doing it because they're insecure and because they want to impress women. And for me, it's neither of those things. For me, it was just, I really enjoy doing my hair. I really like having hair. Ever since I was young, I used to, I would spend time styling my hair and trying different things. I'd always go to the hair salon and like just say, do whatever you want. And they would just kind of do something new with my hair. I missed doing all that. And it was more about just like looking in the mirror and feeling like myself. Whereas before I looked in the mirror, and it's hard to describe, but like I would look in the mirror, I knew that was me. But if I looked at old pictures of me, that felt more like who I feel inside. And then I would look at I would look at who I really was, and it didn't feel 100% like who I felt inside. Now I feel like myself. Now I look at myself in the mirror. Even right now, I am exhausted. Like, I am so tired. I can feel that my eyes are swollen. But I look at myself on camera and I'm like, I'm still happy with the way I look. Even though I look tired and I look like a train wreck right now and I'm pale and bags under my eyes more so than normal. But it was just more of like feeling like who I have always felt like. So it's cool. So I highly, highly recommend it to any guys who are losing their hair and are interested. They do different patches, I guess. So like mine is the full crown. But they also sell just the front for people who are just receding, but the back is still thick. They sell just a part for the back if that's what you're missing. Now, they usually suggest to get the full thing and just shave your head to get it to look more natural, because obviously the more split you have, the harder it is to blend and stuff. But they also do women's hair now. They just recently started promoting that. It's great. It's a great system, and it's a really good price range. I had been looking at this for a while, and I had found a company that was doing it, and when I contacted them, they wanted like $1,500 for the hair system, and their hair systems only lasted, the guy quoted me saying it would last like about 2 months, so it was $1,500 every 2 months. So we're looking at what, if I'm gonna have to do it 6 times, that's 6,000, so that's $9,000 a year. It was $10,000 for the surgery. So like, it didn't make sense. Plus, that's just for the system. He also wanted me to come back every 2.5 weeks to get maintenance done. Like, it was a lot of money. Whereas Lord Hair is a much friendlier budget company. The first system that I wore was like $250. This one's $350. Like, that's a much fairer price than the other guy was charging me. And I think the quality's great. Bulgy, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I want to say that I've seen the display picture seems familiar. So I want to say, I don't know if I've seen you comment or liking my stuff, but I appreciate that. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. Right? Space Pirate from Space? Yeah, it's expensive. It's very, very expensive. Now, I'm pretty sure, I know Lord Hair has very, very expensive systems as well, but the more expensive you go, you're dealing with different types of options, right? Like, one of the things, I don't know if Lord Hair does this, I want to say they do, but I know that a lot of companies will actually customize your hair, and that's why it's so expensive. So they basically get you to like send them hair samples. My guess is probably from different parts of your head, plus pictures, and you send it to them, and they will actually take your hair and then match it and then dye the hair to match your hair specifically. And then that way it's basically like your actual hair. Whereas this is a generic piece, and I select from a generic hair range, how thick it is, the pattern, like the style of hair, whether it's like super curly, kind of curly, loose waves. This is straight, what do they call it? Like straight loose wave or something like that. Basically, when it comes, it's fairly long. It's like 6 inches long, and there was like a slight S wave to it, but not anything crazy, which is how my normal hair was. But they also have like Asian style hair. They have African American hair, so they have a variety of hair, but it's generic. So it may not be exactly like your hair. Like this hair specifically is actually a little bit finer than my hair, but it's thicker than my hair, so it kind of makes up for how fine it is. Whereas like my hair was very bushy, is very bushy. And this hair is not as bushy, but with some product, it matches pretty well, I would say. Yeah, Future, I'm very... I talk about the most random stuff. My channel is mostly about video games, but I like to talk about random stuff just because why not? All right, why not? You probably see me liking, commenting. Your display picture is very unique, and that speaks a lot to your display picture choice, because so many pictures are so generic. It's very hard to stand out. Do you know what I mean? Like mine is a generic headshot, and a lot of other streamers will have like a very generic stream logo that was like all the rage about a year ago, where it was like a cartoon picture of them with like some like 80s synth style color scheme, and it was like their logo with their face in the middle of it in like a circle. That was like the very common streamer thing, whereas yours is very unique and stands out. So it's a good choice. It's a very, very good choice for a display picture for sure. Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. I have to redo my pictures because I had a display picture originally where I was wearing like my Nintendo hat and stuff, but I haven't been wearing my hat now, and so I redid them with the first hair system, but it is slightly dark and thick, and so I want to redo it with this hair system because it matches more. But as you could tell from the camera, I have had a really severe breakout over the last like 3 weeks, and I've had this on for about 3.5 weeks. So I don't want to do pictures because it would take a lot of editing to get it to look okay, and I've been really tired lately, but I am going to do new headshots. But yeah, no, it's great having a very unique display picture that stands out. There's a few people that have display pictures that like instantly I knew who it is, even if I can't really see the display picture, just because it's so unique. And it's too late for so the company's called Lord Hair. Like I said, they've just started doing women's hair. At least I've just started to see women's hair on their website, because when I connected with them, it was November, and I got my first system in December, and only last month I started to see that they're now doing women's hair. And again, they do like strips. Like let's say she's only going bald in the front, they do just strips, or if she's only going bald in the back, they do, you know, a patch for the back, or they do the full wig. So it's just Lord Hair. You can see it right there, all one word, LORDHAIR. They're great. They're from China. Like they get the systems from China, but they're really quick. It takes, I think it's something like between a week and 2 weeks to get to you. Like I said, the price is really fair, and as you could tell, it looks authentic. I've seen some systems that look really, really bad, and I've seen some from this company that on the person it doesn't look very good, but the reason is because they usually make a bad choice in the system they're using. Like I've seen, you know, you'll see some guys that are in like their early 60s, and they're gonna have hair as dark as mine, and it's like, dude, you're in your early 60s. Go for something with at least some salt and pepper, because if you're in your 60s, you don't have perfectly black hair. You know, I'm in my late 30s, and I'm starting to get a couple of gray hairs, but it's like 1 or 2. There's not a lot of gray hair in my head. And so salt and pepper isn't quite right for me yet, but soon. You know, probably in the next 5 years, I'm gonna have to start using salt and pepper systems, but like that's what makes it look bad. Or like you'll get guys with very, very fine hair using very thick systems. It's almost like they're overcompensating for it. And it seems to be a lot of guys that have fine hair in general. You know, usually Caucasian guys tend to have finer hair versus somebody like, you know, an Indian guy or a Latino guy. Our hairs are much thicker in general. but you'll see a guy that has very fine hair wearing something that would be more suited towards like an Indian person, and it just stands out because it's just so much thicker. But that's not something to say about the system. It's about the person making the choice, which is why I was so happy that this one worked so well, because the other one was a bit too thick. But I think they look pretty good. I really like it. I think it's great. And like for guys, they'll style your hair if you want. They'll cut it for you, and send it to you already pre-cut. I get mine cut just because I want it to like match or whatever with what I want to do. But it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool company. Yeah, and that's exactly it, Bulgy. I think gray hair looks better than some guys who dye it, and it just doesn't look good. You know what I mean? When you're younger, it's a bit easier because like you can like it's a bit easier to dye it because it's much more believable for a young guy to have like really unnatural dark hair or really natural blonde hair, just because it's like the thing to do. But once you reach a certain age, it just starts to look like you're trying to compensate. You know, like I have my aunt has a boyfriend that she's been with for forever, and the guy's in his 70s, and he dyes his hair, but he dyes it like it's a brown, but it's got a lot of red in it. So it's not auburn, but it's a very fake brown. It looks almost like somebody who's dyed their hair like a deep brown and then has washed it a whole bunch, and then the dyes come out and now it just looks like a weird orangey brown. That's what his hair looks like. That's how he dyes it. And it just looks bad because the dude's in his 70s. Like, dude, you're old now. Embrace the fact that your hair is gray. You've got a full thick head of hair. Embrace that it's gray. And like, I'm fine with going salt and pepper when the time comes, but like I said, I still only have 1 or 2 gray hairs. My mom is in her 60s, and what is my watch doing? My mom is in her 60s, and she has some gray hairs, but it's nowhere near, like it's just starting to get salt and pepper. And my dad, who is mostly bald too, also just started to really go salt and pepper in the last 5 years, and he's in his late 50s right now. And so like, I'm not expecting to go salt and pepper until I'm in my mid 40s at least. But just embrace it. Just embrace it. Exactly, Future. And like with the balding thing, this is kind of the two-way street with the balding thing. Like, if you're comfortable being bald, then go for it, right? I was comfortable with it. I was fine with being bald, but I missed doing my hair. I missed having that freedom to try different hairstyles. And this is a really stupid thing. I brought it up a couple of times. This is a really stupid thing, but it was big to me. It was in the mornings, I would get up, and I've said this multiple times, so you've probably heard it if you've been around. I get up and then I shower, and because I like the morning shower to try to wake me up. But when I was completely shaved, I would wake up, shower, get dressed, and I still looked exactly the same after all of that as I did rolling out of bed. There was no difference. I could literally get out of bed, wash my face, and get on the road, which convenience-wise was great, but I never felt like I had gotten ready for the day, so I always felt disheveled, I guess would be the best word. No matter how well I dressed, no matter how much I took care of myself, I still felt disheveled. Whereas now, it's like I get up, I have bedhead, I take my shower, I do my hair, and now I feel like, I'm ready for the day. Even if I look tired, even if I am feeling like a mess, I can look at myself and go, I look like I got ready for the day now. And that alone can kind of change my mindset. And so I missed that. I did theater for a long time. Obviously, I'm in the public eye with my little corner of the internet here. And so I hated that not having hair aged me further than what I should be. I'm in my mid 30s and sorry, itchy nose. I'm in my mid 30s, but I would get multiple comments talking about how, I looked older. Now, a lot of people, my friends, would tell me that I didn't look my age, that I looked younger, but, like a year or two younger. But then you'd get the troll comments that would be like, oh, you're in your mid 40s and look at you. And it just sucked not looking my age. And so having hair helps reduce that. And I also do theater. And so the biggest part with my age was that I would audition for roles and they would not give me the role, even if it was a role that was my age, because I still didn't match with the other actors on stage. Best example was just recently, not a couple months ago. It was in November. I auditioned for a show, and actually it was in December, because it was about 3 days before I got the hair system put on. I auditioned for a show and got a call back. So for those who don't know the theater process, basically you go out, you try out for the show, and then they call you back to audition a second time, because now they've made the choices of who they like, and then they have to kind of compare them to each other and match them up to see if they work, because sometimes I may be a great fit for the role, but then the person they match me with, her and I or him and I don't bond, and so it's just not going to work on stage because the chemistry's not there, and so then they have to choose somebody else, type of thing. And so I got the callback. I did the callback, and the problem was that when I did the first audition, the director's like, "I love you, you're the best one that we've had." He's like, "I still got a couple more to see tonight, but I want you for the callback." He's like, "I'm pretty sure I've got the role for you. I need to pick who's going to be your love interest." And when I came back for the callback, he goes, he made me stay the whole night. I auditioned a whole bunch with a bunch of different people. Then he's like, "The problem I've run into," he goes, "the girl that I had chosen for you, decided not to do the role, and she was about 26, so about 10 years younger than me." And he goes, "And the only other woman that's in the running is 19. I'm 36, so it's quite a big age difference." Now, in the show, the character is 34, 33, something like that, and his love interest is supposed to be like 21. So it's supposed to be a fairly large gap, but she looked like a very young 19-year-old. Like, she looked like more like 17. And without my hair, I look like a much older 30-something-year-old. So when you put us side by side, it just looked awkward. And so he ended up passing up on me to somebody else who was close to my age, but he looked a lot younger than I did. And so that was the part for me. It was that I was auditioning for roles that were perfect for my acting skill and my age range, but I didn't look the part. And so when younger actors would come up against me, they would get the role. Whereas now, I feel like if I would have auditioned now, I would have gotten the role, because I look much younger. I still look like I'm in my 30s, but I look like a healthy, vibrant 30-something-year-old versus an old, disheveled 30-something-year-old. And at the time, I was not shaving my head, so it looked even more obvious about me losing my hair. And it looked even messier because I had like the horseshoe thing going on and the very thinning top. So that makes you look even older. And so for me, it was more about, I just wanted to fit the age that I wanted for stage. So I didn't feel like I didn't belong in that role, if that makes sense. You know, walking into the role feeling not confident, but feeling like, okay, no, I can get away with doing this role. Whereas before I was like, yeah, people aren't going to really believe I'm 35. You know what I mean? His small corner, but a great corner. Mike D, hello. Nice to see you. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's really kind of you to say. Patrick Bateman, I am using, so this one's a Sony 5100. And this one is the Sony ZV-E10. So I use Sony cameras. I'm actually, let me get rid of this because I forgot that I put this there. I am actually a Nikon person. That's what I learned photography on. Always loved Nikon. You know, if you don't know anything about photography, Nikon and Canon are kind of like the Xbox and PlayStation of the photography world. But Sony kind of came out of nowhere and started doing like phenomenal camera work. And so I've moved over to Sony. And when it comes to streaming, Sony's kind of the better choice than Canon. Canon still makes DSLR style bodies. Like, they're very heavy, they're very large. And a lot of them still overheat, whereas Sony does a much better job at not overheating anymore, and they're budget friendly. Their lenses are still a little bit pricey, but they're overall budget friendly cameras, and you can tell the quality's pretty good. Now, after saying all that, Patrick, the reason that this looks as good as it does, because you can have this great camera and still not have it look great, is because I've got very good lighting set up in my room. I've got a decent lens. This is a fisheye lens, so it's a very wide angle lens to see a lot of the room, but I've got like contrasting lights behind me. I've got two lights lighting me specifically and a light behind me lighting my hair to kind of differentiate me, so it's all about the lighting. You can get a not as good but a similar look using a C920 webcam if you put the right lighting on, and then if you add something like the NVIDIA broadcast to it, even better. So I would suggest lighting over camera. Don't worry so much about the camera, worry more about the lighting. Andrew Bites, thank you. That's very, very kind of you to say. That is very, very kind of you to say. That's you're flattering me. You're gonna make me blush. Yes, Monster, Patrick. I actually went to college for theater. That was my major. That was what I studied. I actually pursued that for a while, and this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'm gonna start Elden Ring, everybody. I can stream a little bit longer. Nora's on March break, so I can stream a little bit longer today, so there's no huge rush. I actually studied theater. That's what I went to school for. I actually got accepted into a very well-respected musical theater program. They actually bent the rules to accept me as an older student. I was 27 or 28 when I auditioned. So it's almost 10 years ago now. And the oldest they had ever accepted was 24. And they had accepted me because they saw potential in me. They saw how hard I was willing to work. I was auditioning with a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds, and I kept up with them all. I obviously outperformed them all because I had training, but the professor saw that there was something there, and then I got in a car accident and I couldn't do it, so it really sucked. But anyways, that was my training, and that's how I actually got into streaming and content creation as a whole. I was acting, and then I got a job that didn't allow me to act. Why did the music stop? I got a job that didn't allow me to act because of timing of the schedule for work. I was finishing work on the evening shifts. I was finishing work at like 9:30. And if you know anything about theater, actors are usually called into the theater around like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. to get ready, and then like stage time is 9. So there was just no way I could work and do theater. So I was like, you know what? I'll take some time off acting. I'll concentrate on work to save up some money and then get back into acting. But for the meantime, I'll make videos on YouTube. And so I started doing like video reviews and sketches and stuff. If you watch my TikTok, a lot of it is like video game facts, but I throw in the odd sketch and stuff. And that was my idea, was just like the practice being in front of the camera, because like it or not, for acting, if you want to make a decent living, you have to do commercials and film and stuff. And I wasn't very comfortable in front of the camera. I had a very hard time in front of the camera. I am neurodivergent. I'm very awkward. And so I have a hard time being natural in front of the camera in a way that is believable. Not because I'm pretending, but because I am very animated in the camera. Every small movement looks 10 times bigger in a movie. And I've done a few short films, and I was very, very animated. Thankfully, I was playing a cartoony character, so I got away with it. But my idea was to get more comfortable in front of the camera, and then I just kind of fell into this, and I've just been doing this ever since. Obviously, my life has never really matched up with theater again. I am going through some really big changes in my life, and so in the near future, in the next few months, I will have free time to start maybe doing some theater again. So that's kind of the plan. But yeah, I was doing that. I did a lot of theater. I did some voiceover work for like those stupid videos they make you watch when you start a new job. Then you sit down and you're like, here at this family, at Sanchez Family Incorporated, we want to make sure that you feel safe. And the best way to do that is by working safely. Here is Joseph. Joseph doesn't know how to lift. And I did one of those, but I did a Spanish one, written by a guy who didn't speak Spanish. It was really hard because it was so badly written. But yeah, so I did a lot of like acting and stuff. I was never able to get it to take off, partially because of the neurodivergence, partially because just life got in the way, and budget. It's very, very expensive to be an actor, to try to get your career going. That is why there's a lot of nepotism in the acting world, because if you don't have connections and you don't have money, you have to work a million times harder than somebody who has those connections and money. I'm not saying that everybody who's gotten there has had it handed to them. It's just more doors open for people with connections. And so I am an immigrant. I have an immigrant family. They don't really understand the arts, and they don't speak English, so there's no connections there. We were very poor, so no money there. And being neurodivergent, I'm not very good at connecting with people, so I struggled a lot. But now I'm older. Now I've got a good job. I've got my life in order, you know, so it's not like I'm trying to like break out on my own. I've got an established life, so now I can jump into acting, and I should be able to do it a little bit better and take a few more risks. So hopefully this time next year I'll be doing some auditions and stuff. We'll see what happens. You still need to fix the lighting in your streams, something you struggle with. Yeah, Mike, I don't do the acting right now. I have been auditioning on and off, but like for community stuff, just to kind of get back into it. You know, I was a singer for a really long time, and I haven't really sang in a long time. I did the Rocky Horror Show right before the pandemic, and so like in the summertime right before the pandemic, and that show is one of those that's just like ingrained in my body. So even though I can't sing well anymore, I can still sing that show, no problem. I was Frankenfurter. But I used to be a very, very strong singer. But after that, I haven't really sang. So my voice is kind of shot. So I'm trying to get back into the community thing just to kind of get myself warmed up and started again before I really start auditioning and trying to find an agent and all that. But yeah, it was rough. But I do the streaming, I do the TikTok stuff, and I work full time. I have a family. It's a lot. It's a lot to juggle. So I can feel your pain. As far as the lighting goes, lighting can be very, very hard. Lighting can be very, very complicated. But once you figure it out and you set it, you can literally forget it. Like you could just memorize the numbers and you're good to go. And that's kind of where I am. That being said, don't think that you have to go out and buy like the Elgato Stream lights, or that you have to buy like fancy studio lights or anything. You can't see it on camera, and I don't want to turn it because this camera, the HDMI input's a little bit loose and it turns the camera off. But like that's like a $20 ring light that I'm using as my backlight. It's like a $20 ring light. If you were to buy 3 of those, you could be lit perfectly. My 2 main lights, they are a bit more expensive, but at the time I was doing a lot of photography, theater headshots and stuff. I was doing my YouTube videos. I wanted something that I could have a lot of control over. But my original lights, when I first started, I've talked about this multiple times. When I first started streaming, my original light setup, I built myself. I went out and bought a couple of those like construction clamp lights that they sell. You could just go ahead and buy those and then put a bit of wax paper in front of them, and then that'll diffuse it enough and have 2 of them lighting you, and then you're pretty much good to go. It's just about white balance at that point. But what I went even further. I bought those lights, I took them apart, and then I bought a big like pot that you would use for a plant outside. It was plastic from the dollar store. I cut a hole at the bottom of it so I could put the light inside of it, and I hot glued it in. And then I lined the inside of the pot with tin foil so it would reflect as much light as possible. And then I put the wax paper in front, or I took an old shower curtain actually, and I taped that to the front of it to really diffuse it. The reason I did that versus just the clamp light is the clamp light was only like this big. The pot was about this big. The bigger the light, the softer it can be, the less shadows you have. And then I built that, and I had that for my light. And I had no control. I couldn't control the temperature, couldn't control the brightness, but I had a really bright light on me, which then made the camera work a lot less hard, which then made the quality higher. The big key is spending a lot of time watching videos, testing things. I tested a lot, and then I got very good at using very, very bad equipment. And now that I've got good equipment, I've gotten very good at using that. But it's a lot of patience. But lighting can make all the difference. The big thing is you want to light yourself and then have something contrasting in the background. Whether it's a natural light, like I'm blanking on his name. I'm blanking on his name right now. His real name's Liam. But he runs a tech channel on TikTok, and he's really upped his quality. His quality was always good, but he's really upped his quality. One of the things he does is he uses a lot of like natural light in the background. Not natural, but like standard lighting, you know, like mine's unrealistic, right? Like neon lights and stuff. You don't see this in your everyday life. He uses things like a lamp, and it's just regular yellow light in the background, but he makes sure that he is well lit and that light isn't affecting him at all. It's just there for like the aesthetic of it. It's about differentiating you from the background. That's what will make it pop. Because even with these lights, what helps if can I? Yeah, I can turn at least those 2 off. If I turn off the 2 background lights that I have, I have a huge window back there, so that's kind of lighting a lot. But like it's flatter. It doesn't look as poppy, but what helps is that the background is darker than I am, so that still makes me pop out, right? But the reason I add those background lights is just by having that little bit of extra color, I stand out even more. And that's all it really is when it comes to lighting. Light yourself really well, and then make sure there's something that distinguishes you from the background. Like if you've got a plain wall behind you, buy a cheap $20 floodlight from Amazon and just point it to the wall so it lights up the wall a different color, and you're set. It can be pretty easy. Having a nice like hair light, a background, like a backlight for yourself also makes you stand out a little bit. It's not really noticeable. Like you can kind of see the shimmer right there of the light, but all it's doing is just making me stand out from the back a little bit. I can't turn it off because I have to actually stand up to do it, so you can't actively see me turn it on and off. But that's it when it comes to lighting. Ginger, how you doing, man? How's life? You have to bend your back and pull your arms as far away as you can when you're lifting heavy things. It was rough. It was specifically for a lawn care company, Space Pirate. It was for a lawn company, and they used words that I didn't use. The guy who did it wasn't Latino. He was just a guy who learned Spanish. He spoke it, and what he wrote, 99% of it was right, but some of the words that he used weren't real words. I don't know where he got the words. He probably Googled it, got a translation, and just used it, and it wasn't right. Because there was one word in particular, relanti. I don't know what that means. I've never heard that word. I asked my parents. They didn't know what it was. At the time, again, the internet wasn't something that was like common. Not common, but like it wasn't something that you just ran to figure out stuff. So I just never thought about Googling what it was. But like some of the words that he used were Mexican nomenclature that I don't use because I'm from El Salvador, and so there are words that Mexicans use that I don't use, and there are words that mean one thing in like the Mexican dialect that mean something totally different in our dialect, and so it was a little bit hard for us to fully make sense of what he was writing. I did a few of them. I didn't do them all, and then I ended up just not working with them anymore. But yeah, that was rough. No, it was Mexican. It was Mexican Spanish. It was really weird. It was a really weird thing. They were from Texas, the company that had hired us. So they were very much geared towards Mexican workers. But like I said, the guy didn't speak Spanish. It was very evident by the way he wrote things. I had to rewrite a few things to make it make sense. But some of the words, I just didn't know what they were at all. Like, I'd never heard them. I should play Iron Man. Could you imagine? Oh, man. No, so there's Spain and all of Latin America. And they are two different types of Spanish. But even within Latin America, there's very different Spanishes. Here's a good example. So don't quote me because I might get the countries wrong. But in Colombia, I want to say it's Colombia. Coger is like a slang term to pick something up. Because the proper word, or at least the Spanish word that we use, is recoger, which is to pick something up. So Colombians shorten it to coger. And so that's what they use to pick it up. In El Salvador, that means to do the tango laying down. That's what it means. We don't use it in that way. Like, we don't use it to pick up in any circumstances. We never use it that way. For us, it means to do the hokey pokey. And you take it out, then you put it in, and you shake it all about. You know what I mean? Anyways, so that's what we use it like. And for me, so growing up in Canada, the beauty is that a lot of the Latinos from here are from... What are you doing, Step Bro? What a time to talk about it. I'm talking about the hokey pokey, and you're... What are you doing, Step Bro? I don't know if you guys can hear that. It's going in my ears. I have a sound thing, but I don't have the volume turned up, and it goes, what are you doing, Step Bro? It's perfect timing. Anyways, so we don't use that word in that way ever. We use it in the adult way. And so what I was getting at is the beauty in Canada is that it's not like in the States where almost everybody that's Latino is either from like Cuba or Puerto Rico or Mexico. Like, those are the three main Latino groups that are in the States. Obviously, my family's in the States, so there are people from El Salvador there and stuff. But in Canada, you don't have one over the other. It's all different types of Latinos are here, right? Like, you'll speak to Dominicans, you'll speak to Puerto Ricans, you'll speak to people from Costa Rica. Like, there's just all different kinds. So we learn different words from different languages. So I don't fully know what words I use that might be from a different country, but that one is definitely one that I don't use. And when I was in high school, I used to run a dancing squad, and there was a girl, this was before I had taken over as the choreographer, there was a girl whose mom was choreographing for us, and she asked me to do the dance with her daughter. And her daughter was a couple years younger than me, but her daughter was very pretty, like really, really pretty. But they were brand new to the country. They had been here for like a year or two. So the daughter barely spoke English. And we would have one-on-one dance choreography practice with just the mom and the daughter. And the one day we were practicing, and her mom said that she wanted me to coger her in my mind, it was she wanted me to do the hokey pokey with her daughter. I went beet red. I didn't know what to say. I was like, what? And she's like, oh my God, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from El Salvador. She goes, sorry, I forgot you guys use it that way. I meant to pick her up. I was like, oh, I had no idea that they used it to say that. I thought it was the dirty thing. And so it's like there are different uses for words in different countries just within Latin America. It's kind of like even in the States, you speak different English than Canadians do, and even within the States, there are different like slang terms depending on where you are in the States that will mean different things. It's kind of like that. But yeah, the Spanish are a completely different beast. It's almost an unwritten thing within the Latino community that Spanish people almost like look down their nose at us because we don't speak the Spanish they speak. And if we say we're Spanish, they get really, really offended by it because we're not Spanish. So there's like this superiority, supremacy thing that goes on there. It's kind of frustrating. But yeah, there is a difference between Spanish and our Spanish. It's like American Canadian English versus British English. There's a difference. But even between American and Canadian English, there's a difference. So it's the same with us. Preston, how you doing, man? How's it going? But yeah, Spanish is an interesting language. Even within our own cultures, there's a lot of differences. I only learned this recently. My parents never really talked about the history of my country or anything because we came here because of a civil war. We weren't refugees. We came here just as regular immigrants. My parents were both, my dad was in medical school actually. My mom was a nurse. She worked at the military hospital, so she saw some horrendous things. But they came here because they got the opportunity. My dad's family came here and they petitioned him and he showed up. And at that time it was like they were done. He was going to live here and we were going to stay back home. And when he got here, the Canadian government, while he was working on his citizenship, found out that he had me and my mom, and then they automatically gave us citizenship once he got his. So we were able to come. They didn't automatically, but like they put us in queue for it. So then I got it because I was a kid, but my mom went through the testing and got her citizenship. It was a lot easier back then. But my parents came here because of that, but they were never very political people. So I didn't learn a lot about my country, but I actually found out that we were part of Guatemala and then we had like a little mini civil war and we seceded from them and we became our own country. We're one of, if not the smallest country in Central America with one of the most dangerous populations in all of the Americas. It's dangerous there. It's really dangerous there. And one of the biggest gangs in the United States actually comes from my country, which is ironic that we're one of the smallest countries. But yeah, it's interesting. And even within each other, we have a lot of hate for each other. There's a lot of infighting. It's hilarious. We're super united, yet we're super divided. It's crazy. Space Pirate. I don't know, Space Pirate, because I never took any Spanish lessons, so I can read in Spanish, but I don't know anything about conjugating. I don't know how to spell properly. I don't know like sentence structure as far as like a correct sentence structure. I write the way that I speak, and I know some of it isn't 100%. I do speak better Spanish than most people that came around my age, but I'm not great education-wise. But yeah, so there's a little history lesson on who I am and where I come from. But yeah, lots of interesting stuff. There's not a misconception. It's just we all get kind of homogenized as Mexican because Mexico is such a big country and because most of the people coming up north are from Mexico, just because it's easier to get from Mexico to here. But yeah, there's big differences between us all. One last thing. What's it called? Oh my god, I don't remember what it's called. There's a oh my god, I don't remember what it's called. There's a meal in Mexico that they make that's like almost like a taco drizzled, like a smothered in like a tomato sauce. I don't remember what it's called, but that's what it is there. But for us in El Salvador, it's like a fried tortilla with meat and egg on top of it. They're totally different meals, yet they're named the exact same thing. And so like, it took me a while to kind of catch on that we were talking about totally different things. Enchiladas. For them, enchiladas are like, it's almost like a taco that's like covered in sauce. Ours is literally like a deep fried tortilla. And then you put like shredded meat on top and then like cheese and lettuce, like a type of lettuce mix, and then like an egg on top of it, hard-boiled egg, like totally different meals. So it's always weird. Or quesadilla. Everybody knows the Mexican quesadilla, which is like 2 tortillas with cheese in the middle of it. For us, a quesadilla is a cake. And so it's totally different. I remember the first time when I was old enough, I was in Mexico and I was reading the menu. We were driving to El Salvador, and we were like in the middle of the city. We weren't in like a tourist area. It was just in the middle of nowhere in a hotel. And I was reading the menu of the restaurant, and it said quesadilla, and I ordered. I was all excited, and then I got the tortilla with cheese, and I was really upset because I didn't know that it wasn't the cake. I thought it was the cake. I was really upset about it. Oh man. I don't know if it's similar to the way we talk about pizza. It's more like the UK and us with chips. We call chips what they call crisps, and they call chips what we call fries. And so if you go to the UK and ask for chips, you're gonna get fries. Or if they come here and ask for chips, they're gonna get what we call chips. They're both potato, but they're totally different things, right? So like if you're going out there and you want like fries with your burger, you're gonna have to ask for chips. But if they come here and ask for chips with their burger, they're gonna get a bag of potato chips, and it's gonna be disappointing to them. It's kind of the same for us. So it's kind of that thing. Whereas like Chicago pizza versus Italy pizza, it's still the same meal, it's just made differently. For us, it's a totally different meal. Like a totally different meal. Okay, anyways, let's get to actually playing the game. I got all distracted and talked way too much. But yeah, it's interesting. The cultures are very interesting. Even like within music, everybody thinks of the same style, in the States especially, they think of the same style of music when it comes to Latin music. They either think of like the Mexican, it's like their big band music. It's like when they have like all the big brass and the big tuba and trombones and stuff. And the guys who wear like the cowboy outfits. And then they think of like salsa. And like that's all they think that Latin music is. And I played something that was neither. It's closer to the Mexican style, because even in that Mexican style, I think those are called corridos. But there's like cumbia that they play. But even their cumbia is very different than my cumbia. Like my cumbia is, you know, it usually consists of a bass, a piano, timbales, usually a couple of trumpets and maybe some saxophones. And whereas like Mexican cumbia is usually a guitar, bass, even then not always a bass, usually a tuba, and then like a piano, some regular drums, and then a bunch of trumpets. So it's very tinny, it's very like high frequency, whereas ours has a lot more low end with like the actual bass, and then you include like the saxophone, which is heavier. So like there's a very big difference even just in the instrumentation. Despite the rhythms being similar, it's a very different feel. It's cool. There's a lot of variety in our music. Hello, I'm Valenug? I was trying to see if maybe, I don't know if it's just a bunch of letters and numbers or if it's actually trying to say a word, but hello, welcome. I apologize that I couldn't figure out your name. But yeah, that's life. That's life. Hunter, hello. Sorry, my text stopped working on screen. I noticed that you were sending a whole bunch of stuff and for some reason the text stopped. That's so weird. I hate when it does that. Okay. What did you say? I still think it's strange how Americans call chips fries. Yeah, it's just a language difference, and it's interesting. It's just like for us, hearing chips sounds weird, right? Or like the one all American Canadians always want to bring up is what you guys call cigarettes, and for us it's such a big slur, and so it's like it's just differences. That one in particular is a very good example of what I was saying earlier about coger. For us, you know, that word is a very offensive slur. In the UK, it's just a word for cigarette. It's a slang term for a cigarette. So it's the same for them. When they say coger, they just mean to pick something up. For me, it's I don't know if I have young kids watching. I'm not really family friendly anymore, but like for me, it's like saying fuck, right? And so it's kind of like, whoa, that's really rude when I hear it and I'm not expecting it. obviously I know what it means, so when they say it, I know to kind of step past it, but there's still that initial shock of hearing the word, and then you kind of move on. A Mexican in general tends to be more vulgar in the way they speak versus the way we speak. We're still very vulgar people in our language use, but Mexicans tend to swear a lot more. But they don't mean it in an offensive way. Like it's much more casual to say stuff like that. Whereas like for us, when you use a swear word, it is much more intended to be vulgar. So when I speak to Mexican people, it's a little bit harder for me because they're so vulgar. I feel much more hoity-toity when I speak to them because I'm not swearing as much. Or like even something like a lot of Americans know this, but people who don't know anything about Spanish may not. We have two ways of addressing people where like there's the usted, which is much more respectful, usually if somebody of a higher class, or if it's like a stranger. I can't see the alert. I can't see the alert. Hey, thank you for the sub. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much for the sub. That's awesome. Barack Perez, hello, nice to see you. Patty Rowe, I'm doing really well. I'm doing really, really well. Do they use that in Australia too, Preston? It's become a little bit. Yeah, so it's one of those like it's crossed the boundaries. I mean, the world is so much more connected now that any slur in one place eventually falls into the next place. Like I know, I'm not gonna say it because I know it's very offensive, especially in Europe. What we use for like somebody who's very like scatterbrained and freaks out a lot, and it's the S word. For those who are American, I know I don't remember her name right now. She's the singer. I can't even think of a song that she sings right. Lizzo sang a song with that word in it, and then she had to go and re-record it because she used the word and then found out it was a slur. And so like that it's like that eventually it like overlaps now because the world is so connected. But yeah, Mexicans in Spanish, we have the two different ways of addressing somebody, and it's based on kind of rank and respect. In my country in particular, if you don't know, I don't know anymore, but the way my parents are, because they came here in the 80s, they may be stuck in a kind of a time warp. When you weren't related to somebody, or you didn't have like a direct personal relationship with somebody, and even with a personal relationship, you would still treat somebody as like Ms. somebody or Mr. somebody. And so like my parents were married and my dad was still calling her Ms. Chacon, like still calling her Ms. whatever, even though they were married, because there was just like this need for this respect. So we use the you in the same way. Usted and tú are two very different ways of saying you. If you use tú, it's very personal. Like we know each other, we hang out, mom and dad type of thing. Even some kids still call their parents usted because of respect. Like, you know how some kids will say yes sir to their parents, that kind of idea. But like your siblings, you're going to call each other tú. Your best friend, you're going to call them tú. But like maybe a classmate that I might be friends with, but I don't really know them, usted. For me in particular, anybody that I don't really know, usted all the time. And Mexicans don't really use that as much, and they almost see it as a snobby response if you use usted, even though that's not what you mean. It's, for me, it's more of like a distance keeper. And it's very common amongst men and women. Men will treat women with usted and women will treat men that way because it feels inappropriate to use tú with each other. It's a little bit too personal. And so that's one of the things that I have a hard time with Mexicans, is when they talk to me, they speak with tú. And I feel it's very personal, and it feels a bit too personal when I don't know you. And so like I've worked with women who are Mexican, and they'll talk to me as tú, and it almost comes off as flirtatious, and they're not being flirtatious, but it's the language difference and it's the cultural difference. It's really interesting when you start mixing, even though we speak the exact same language, just the way we use the language can totally change the way we perceive each other, even though it's not intended, if you know what I mean. It's interesting. It's really, really interesting. But yeah, Hunter, yeah, it's and a lot of Canadians and Americans have very similar English, very, very similar English. But even we have very different English compared to the Americans for some stuff. But yeah, it's just the difference between British English and American all of the continent of America. I have a hard time with that because like for us, Americans are anybody that's like above Mexico. So all of Canada and the States are just Americans. And not because we think that they're all one country. It's just when we talk to each other, we just say Americans when we're talking about non-Latino people that aren't immigrants here. But it's just like the easy response type of thing. But yeah, we have very interesting differences that are just slight that you don't know unless you're in the know, right? It's like within Americans and Canadians. We notice difference with each other, but a lot of people in Europe can't tell the difference between Americans and Canadians. Hence why so many Americans wear Canadian flags on their backpacks, because the people in Europe can't fully tell the difference, and we can almost always immediately tell when somebody's American versus Canadian. Just because of the way we speak, the way we react to things, the way we interact is just different based on what country you're from. It's interesting. People are very interesting things. Oh, yeah, Preston. Yeah, Australians are very, very full of what we would consider vulgarities, even though they don't mean it. Like the "see you next Tuesday," they drop that word pretty much every other word. Whereas here, it's like such an offensive word to say. But they don't mean it in that way. To them, it's just like calling you jerk. Not even you jerk. Like, I don't even know. I don't think we have anything comparable because we don't use that kind of language that way. But it's interesting. Life is cool. Different languages are cool. The way we use the same language is cool. Yeah, we can feel the differences. It's not always the case, right? Like if you talk to somebody that's right around the border, like I don't feel like I have a severely Canadian accent. There are definitely words that I say that are much more Canadianized, but we also have more of a British influence in the way we speak, or a European influence in the way we speak, because we have French in our language and we are still part of the kingdom or whatever. But like I got a lot of flack when I spoke about the game. I'm forgetting it now. Oh, I can't remember what the word is. It was one of the horror games that I played. I'm thinking about another word that does the same thing, but I can't remember what it's called. But another word that's an example is like foyer. We say foyer. Americans say foyer because there's an ER at the end. But the word is a French word, and so we use it with the French pronunciation of foyer. And so like that instantly makes you stand out if you're in the States and you say foyer, because Americans say foyer. But if they're here and they say foyer, we instantly know that they're probably American or have some kind of American history because they say foyer. Oh my God, what game is it? I think I have it on Steam. Let me just check Steam, because now it's bothering me. Not this. This is all VR. Okay, here we go. Oh my God, what's it called? It's that game that's scary and you're in a haunted house. Yeah, Preston, we're doing Elden Ring. I'm about to start it. I got on a bit of a tangent. Oh my God, what's that game called? And you thought they were just American. Yeah, and like, again, when you grow up with one accent and you hear our accent, like when you grow up with like the British accent around you, okay, here's a perfect example that you would feel the difference. You can tell the difference between the different dialects in the UK. Like if you're way closer to like Scotland, you can hear the difference between like the Scottish accent and the people that live right at the border that are still part of England. But I hear them exactly the same. I can't tell the difference. Or like in the UK and in England in particular, I can't tell the different dialects that are there. Like I can hear Cockney, which is like that. I can hear the cartoony Cockney versus like the Queen's style of accent. I don't hear anything else in between. I can't tell the difference between anything else. Those are the two that I hear. So I've seen people in England that are like, oh, you're from here, you're from Sussex or whatever. And they can tell. I can't tell the difference. For me, it's either Cockney or it's like the British stereotypical accent. And that's all I hear. So I'm sure it's the same for you when you hear like Canadian versus American. Now, obviously, there's like the extremes. Like you can hear the Southern accent, right? Because they speak differently. Or you can hear, I can't do a Cajun, but you can do like the Cajun accent that some people have in like New Orleans. Or like there's like the California, which is a lot like more open. Obviously they don't all talk with this like sing-songy, but like there's just a way that they speak that's slightly different versus like New York, right? Or Boston. There's the more cartoony accents, but overall there's like a very generalized English accent that we all have that is different than the British accent. But we can't distinguish all the different types of British accents versus you guys distinguishing all the different types of like somebody who comes from like Newfoundland versus somebody who comes from British Columbia and Toronto will all have totally different accents. Toronto, that's one of the words. But the Canadians were losing their minds about that movie with Kevin Hart and I can't remember who the other guy was, the man from Toronto. And all the guys were like, I'm the man from Toronto. And all the Canadians were going, that's not how you say Toronto. Because we all say Toronto. We don't say the second T. And everybody else on the planet says Toronto. And for us, that was like an instant red flag of these guys don't know, and these guys are not Canadian. Don't be hating on Southern boys. Yeehaw. Yeah, Future, and I cannot. I know, like I said, I know like the Queen's British accent and like Cockney. And then that's it. And like even within like Scotland and Ireland, I always screw up the accents, not because I don't hear the difference or because I don't know that they're two totally different countries. It's I have to stop and think for a second to know which one goes with which. And even then, within Ireland, I know there are different variants of the Irish accent. And in Scotland, there are different variants of the Scottish accent. There are some Scottish people that I cannot understand a word they say. And there are some Irish people that I cannot understand a word they say. And then there's some Irish people that pretty much sound British to me. And there are some Scottish people that have very, very light Scottish accents that also sound like parts of England to me. And so it's like, it's hard for me to distinguish them fully, unless it's like the very stereotypical accent. And for most of the world, when they think Canadian, they think of what we hear when we hear Newfoundland. And the funny part is there's a guy in particular who lives in Newfoundland, and his whole thing is about how Newfoundland, real Newfoundlanders sound very much like people from Ireland. Is it Ireland? I think it's Ireland. And you can almost not distinguish the difference between the two because their accents are so similar. But most people around the world, when they think of the Canadian accent, is what we normally hear when we hear somebody from Newfoundland. Because their accent is much more of that singy-songy, eh? And they throw that A in a lot more, and it's a lot harder to understand them. And they talk really fast, so there's always an ongoing joke in Canada that, oh, they're Newfies, because you just can't understand them because they talk so quickly. And they have such a thick accent versus the rest of Canada. But somebody in England may not hear the differences, whereas we really hear the differences. Oh my God, what's that game called? Oh, what's that game called? Haunted House, Haunted Mansion. I know it starts with an A. I'm not remembering it all. And it's really bothering me. Makes for a very odd accent. Yeah, those are always the most interesting when you're raised with somebody with an accent. It happens a lot with my friends. I have some friends. I had one friend that put on a fake accent and really bugged me, but at the time I couldn't call him on it. Now I'm just like, why? Obviously wanting acceptance. Yeah, it was that game where like you played 4 different stories. It was one about like the old lady. Then there was one of like the kid that died. And then there was the one guy who killed his whole family. That's the one. Yes, that's the one, we win. There we go. So what I was trying to use as my example is I got a lot of flack because I made some videos on the game Visage. Except Canadians don't say Visage. Some do. But a lot of Canadians don't say Visage. We say Visage. because it's a French word. And so we have that French influence in the way we speak. So we say visage. A lot of us do anyway. And so I would always say either visage or visage. I don't know. So many Americans were infuriated that I was saying visage. They're like, why do you say it that way? It's visage. And it's like, that's the American way of saying it. We say visage. And they would get so mad because, no offense to my American friends, but a lot of Americans think that their way is the only way of everything. I had an American friend who I knew in real life who grew up in the States and then lived here, who got mad at me because I say new and he says new. And he would get mad at me because I wouldn't say new, I would say new. And new is more of like the British way of saying it, and new is the American way of saying it. And he thought that was the only way of saying it. And so it's like those... yeah, Preston. So those people got really mad at me when I was saying visage versus visage. Now to somebody from Britain, they may not pick up on that little detail, but Americans instantly picked it up. Even though I don't have a very thick Canadian accent, that is one of the things that they noticed right away. And there are certain things, a certain sing-songy way of speaking that Canadians do have. I don't have it as much, but that's due to me being an immigrant. And so my voice doesn't always follow the fully Canadian pattern. It, for the most part, does, but not fully. Now, going back to the accent, Preston, this is hilarious. This guy's from El Salvador. His family comes from El Salvador. He's got no Mexican heritage at all. And for those who don't know, Mexicans have a very unique sing-songy way of speaking. People from El Salvador have a very sing-songy way of speaking too, but it's very different than the Mexican sing-songy way. And his parents had known my parents. They all came here around the same time in the 80s. His parents were very political. His parents the Civil War in El Salvador ended in like 1992 or something like that. They're still fighting about it now. They still run a radio station where they still talk about it. Like it's been 30 years. Give it up. It's done. The group that you are fighting for is, or at least was, in charge of the country. Like you guys are still arguing over something that's over and you're not even there. The big ongoing joke is that they were cowards. They all ran away and live here, but they're trying to act like they were all tough, but you all ran away. So like, if you really wanted to fight for your country, why didn't you stay and fight? But anyways, not the point, but they were very Salvadorian. And after grade 9, after the first year of high school, all of a sudden he started talking like this, which is totally the Mexican accent. This isn't the way people from El Salvador talk. Like, we don't talk like this at all. But suddenly he was talking like this, even though he came here when he was around the same age as me, and I came here when I was just barely 2. But why does he talk like this all of a sudden? Now I see him as an adult, and he's got a slight bit of accent still, but not as strong. Nowhere near like that. Like, he had a full-blown Mexican accent. It was the weirdest thing ever, especially because it came out of nowhere. Like, it wasn't like he grew up with that accent and kind of just like, it just became part of him. No, he didn't have that accent, then from one day to the next, he just had it. It was really weird. Oh, I'm offended. Oh, man. Sounds like Blockery. And that's the weird part. What was I playing? I was playing GTA 3, and they had like a really bad Mexican accent. It was hilarious. But yeah, it's interesting. There are people that do grow up with their parents' accents. Like I said, I know people who have like a slight accent because their parents had a slight accent. My brother's wife has a slight accent, and she came here, I think she was like 6 or 7 when she came here, and she still has a slight accent when she speaks English. Yet she can't speak without an accent in Spanish. She has a very thick accent in Spanish. I would say her Spanish is at like 75%. Mine's at like 95%. Hers is at like 75%. And she still has an accent in English. But it's because her parents barely speak English, and she grew up with that accent around her. My parents, on the other hand, they have a very thick accent, but we watched a lot of English television. We watched a lot of English movies. My parents worked with a lot of people who only spoke English. So we weren't as exposed to it as she was, whereas her parents worked with a lot of people from El Salvador. They only spoke Spanish. They only watched Spanish movies. So like, her exposure was a lot higher, so she had the thicker accent. It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, when he does. They've been married for like, oh God, it must be like 15 years now or something. I don't know. It's been a long time. Been a really long time. Are you Mexican? Oh, man. Hi, Ghost. How are you? Ghost is on TikTok, everybody. She's my secret alt crush. Don't tell her. Ghost, I hope you have fun at the birthday party. I hate kids' birthday parties. I like kids. Just they scream so much at them. Oh my god. Oh my god, they scream so much at them. Drives me crazy. All right, Future, see you later. Thank you for hanging out. I appreciate it. Sorry, I didn't play anything. Let me start playing. Let me actually start playing. I'm supposed to be playing, and I've been talking and talking and talking. Okay. I think we're live. I think we're good. I think if I open that, chat should stay working. I did, we win. I did. But I'm not in a huge rush today. Like right now, I'd have to end to go pick up Nora, but she's home for March break. Hey, why isn't my... Oh wait, hold on. There we go. But she's on March break, so she's just like hanging out with her tablet. So I'm looking at the wrong camera, so I can go live for a bit longer. But yeah, it's interesting growing up in Canada, especially by the border, where I'm exposed to a lot. I keep looking at that camera, where I'm exposed to a lot of Americans. I get to see a lot. It's pretty interesting. Like I'm literally 5 minutes from the border. Like if I go down my street and turn left and then drive for 5 minutes, I'm at the border. So I get to see a lot of Americans here. Oh, nice. Nice. I always struggle. Like I'm socially awkward. I'm really, really socially awkward. And so I always struggle with stuff like that. My nephew, is it my nephew? It's either my nephew or my cousin's kid who had a birthday, and I went, and like all the adults were sitting together and talking, and I was kind of just like off to the side. I've always been kind of that outcast that kind of just sits on their own. It gets really awkward because then I look like a creep that's like there. I'm watching the little kids because I'm not talking to any of the adults. And when I try, none of them have any interest that I have. And I'm that really awkward person. They'll come in and be like, hey, how's it going? I'm just like, good. Well, see you later. I don't know what to say. I don't have any common interests that people have. I'm not an adult. I'm the same way. I get ready so early because I get so anxious. But then I just end up being really awkward, so... It's always like that. It's always like that. I know, Ginger. It's weird. A streamer that plays video games? What is this? What have I done with Elden Ring so far? So we haven't done much since the last time you were here. We beat the guy here at the beginning. No, here at the beginning of... Where is it? It's here. We beat the guy here at the... I'm so disoriented. Here we go. We beat this guy here at the beginning of the Stormvale Gate thing. And then the guy at the end of Stormvale Gate. We also beat the guy down here. And that's all we've done. So I came up here and I explored a whole bunch. And I was really underpowered in this area. And people were suggesting that I level up my weapon, but I didn't have any of the stones. So I've come back here to kind of wander around and try to find stones to level up. But yeah, Ghost, I'm really socially awkward. It's really weird when I go places because I just kind of sit by myself awkwardly, no matter where I go. At the time, I didn't realize I was being socially awkward. I just figured I was really quiet. Now that I've learned more about myself, I go back and oh man, my stream is... Hey, why is that thing still up on screen? Nobody can see it. Silent Hill's up. Sorry, everybody. I didn't realize that was up. There. That's better. That's better. There's me being responsible and actually paying attention to my stream. Oh man, Ginger, I'm paying such little attention. It's not so much I'm enjoying it. I just don't know where I'm going, and I stop and talk and then don't do anything. Why is it struggling? Let me turn down these settings. Maybe it's just a bit too high. Let's go to medium. Is that going to help? There we go. That's a bit better. It's still a little bit choppy, but it's better. It's still a little bit choppy. Okay. Well, it is what it is. Seamless co-op mod run. What is that, Pug? What is that? Yeah, that's what happened. Weewin mentioned you and you appeared. If that's all it takes, I know what to do now. But yeah, now that I go back and now that I know about myself and I go back and I kind of watch or think about the things that I've done, I'm like really socially awkward. All right, Preston, for sure. I'll keep an eye out. Yeah, so I don't do well when it's like kids parties and stuff because I just always feel really, really awkward. I just don't know how to interact with people. I really don't know how to interact with people. It sucks. And I don't know how to read people, so I never know what their intentions are when they're saying things to me. You know, and I don't mean it like, are they using me? Are they having dirty thoughts about me? It's just like, are they being mean right now with what they're saying, or are they being nice? Are they being sarcastic, or are they being serious? Am I supposed to laugh right now, or am I supposed to, like, just not, am I supposed to just kind of be like, oh, okay. Or are they saying this because they want me to kind of continue the questioning? Or am I supposed to now, like, give my example of this? Am I saying my example too much? That's one thing I tend to do a lot. I'm trying really hard and I'm struggling. I'm struggling with it so bad. I'll have a friend that'll reach out and be like, oh, this and this happened. And it'll be like 4 lines of a message. And then my response will be like 15 lines. And I turn it into about me, but it's not because I'm intending it to be about me. It's because I'm trying to like relate by being like, oh, I can relate to that. This happened to me. And then obviously my like spicy ass wants to like give every detail because I'm so scared I'm going to be misinterpreted because that happens 99% of the time. And I'm just so tired of people getting upset with me over something that I didn't intend to mean, but then I did mean. Or like that, getting mad at me over something I didn't intend, but they think is what I meant. And so now they've completely misconstrued. And so like I over-explain like I'm doing at this very second. Gregory Hawley, I don't even know who the fire giant is. Me too, Ghost. Me too. The mod that improves co-op, so when one person dies, you respawn in the... Oh, really, Pug? I didn't know that existed. I haven't played with this with anybody. My brother bought it on the PlayStation, and I got it on PC. But like, that's a really great feature. With the Soulsborne, there's such a nightmare when you die. Give me just a second. I got your message, Preston. Yeah, Ghost, I was very, very much... I was outgoing, and I was... It's hard for me to judge. Preston knew me before a whole bunch of stuff changed. So he has a different perspective than I do because he actually saw how I was. So I don't know if I'm tainting my view of myself because of everything I know now, or if I'm thinking of it accurately or not. But like, I was very outgoing. I was always socially awkward, but because I didn't see it, I was almost more confident and more of a social butterfly. But I never made meaningful connections with people. So I was one of those people that like, I would hear about people hanging out on their off time. I would hear about people getting together for Christmas and all that kind of stuff. And I was never a part of that. Yet, you know, when I was out and about, I was one of the people making jokes and laughing and, you know, goofing off and the life of the party most of the time. But now I'm like super anxious and like I get very insecure. But a big part of it is I've stopped masking. I've stopped pretending. Whereas before I used to be very, very worried about being liked. So I would put on a facade when I was around people. I would be extra outgoing so I could be likable. Because I saw people liked that, so I would do it so they would like me. My friends would be doing that, so my instinct would be, that's what everybody is doing, so I'll do it too. I'll be just as outgoing and ridiculous. Whereas now, I don't care for masking because it's exhausting, because I am full of self-doubt when I'm masking, because it's always they like me now, but they don't know who I am. And the second they do know who I am, they don't like me. And I'm not saying like they're not gonna like me. No, they don't like me when they get to know me because I'm either too negative or I am way too serious. I stress out a lot. And so like it was a lot of self-doubt in the sense of like they only like me because I'm faking, so I got to keep up this fake persona. And so it's like then that would almost like double down on the feeling that nobody really likes me because I was so worried about people liking me, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Whereas now, like, whoa, that's not a concern. Whoa, what the? I thought you were gonna hit me from above, you jerk. Whereas now that's not really something I worry about because now I don't care if I'm not likable. And now I know about masking, so I can almost like strategically mask because I know I'm going to have to when I go to auditions and stuff. But before I knew I was doing it, but I didn't realize that it was... I didn't realize it was like a defense mechanism or like a way to kind of fit in. Before it was more of like, I thought everybody was doing it, so it was just kind of like what we had to do when you go to an audition. Be extra nice and bubbly and pretend like you're interested. But then my friends would like actually talk about the director's history and everything, and I'd be like, you read up on all that stuff? I just thought we were just pretending to care. Whereas now I know. So it's like now I know I'm going to be masking to be in that room, so I know nobody else is doing that, so I have to actually pay attention, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but yeah. Definitely not socially awkward. I think I got really good at pretending to fit in. You know, I think a big part of it is definitely just my own self-doubt, just from everything that I went through. For those who are on TikTok and stuff, Preston was saying that I was very personable and not socially awkward from what he can remember. I think definitely a part of it is just what I went through. You know, I got filled with self-doubt just hearing so much negative stuff in a very short amount of time. Kind of gets you to start to doubt yourself. So that's why I was saying Preston knows me better because he saw me from the outside, whereas I'm on the inside, right? I look back at those memories and I'm like, was I actually being funny or was I being... You know when somebody's being really like, they're trying really hard to either impress you or to get you to laugh and you're just like, haha, please stop. You're like, I've had enough. So like my own self-doubt makes me go, is that what people were doing or were they actually laughing with me? And that's definitely just a self-doubt thing. But I also know I was definitely masking. I know that I was very socially awkward growing up. When I was a kid, I remember how socially awkward I was. Like, I look back at things that I would do as a kid, and it was like, dude, that is such a flag. Nobody likes you. And then once I kind of started to mask is when everybody started to like me. So I know that is definitely there, but yeah, it's kind of hard to look back at yourself with a proper perspective, if that makes sense. I was like, Rico Suave. Preston, jeez. Oh, man. Rex the Cookie Wolf, how you doing, man? How are you? How's it going, man? How's life? I've been seeing your stuff on my For You page recently. Hadn't seen your stuff in a while. I know you popped in a few weeks back. It's always nice to see you, man. Always brings me nice memories and fills me with warm, fuzzy feelings. Yeah, Ghost. I was like, Rico Suave. The funny thing is that, like, I put on that persona. That's who I was putting on. That's 100%. That was 100% put on. For those who aren't on YouTube, and for those who don't really understand what Preston's talking about, a lot of people on that were in my life earlier would have considered me I guess a ladies' man, or would have considered me like Rico Suave, like he says. I did date quite a bit, never anything serious. It was always like date for a couple months and then break up, date for a couple months and break up. And, you know, and the dating was like, we talked on the phone, we held hands once in a while, maybe we kissed, very childish dating. But it was always a persona that I put on, of like that confidence that girls want me. Lately, I have been trying to be more accurate with the way that I look at myself. And I haven't made this conclusion yet, but I'm leaning towards the conclusion that I think I'm better looking than I am perceived by other people. If that makes sense. And I don't mean that as in like a conceited, like, I am sexy. I mean it as in like, I don't think I'm a bad looking guy. Maybe I'd rank myself at like a 7, you know, not average. And I'm not saying like 5 as ugly. I'm saying 5 is like the average looking guy. 10 would be like supermodel looks. I'd say like a 7, not supermodel, because obviously I've got acne, I've got a big nose, I've gone bald, you know, I've got issues and flaws, but I think I'm a decent looking guy. But I think I'm better looking than I am. At least that's what I'm kind of coming to the conclusion of. But I would put on a persona that I believed I was very good looking. I put on a persona that I believed that women wanted me, and it was more of like I get to choose what women I want, and I would flirt with women unapologetically. You know, even though inside I knew I wasn't as good looking. Like in my opinion, Preston is a far better looking guy than I am. He's far more personable than I am, and he's far more authentically caring than I am. But I would put on that persona of like, I can get women if I want. So a lot of people on the outside would have, and they have commented on stream that they would have considered me a ladies' man. Funny part is that the second that any woman actually showed any interest in me, or I actually had an interest in a woman, I would go down in a ball of fire. It was so embarrassingly bad. So for those who have followed my content for any amount of time, you've seen that I've made videos about, like, you know, defending women who play video games and stuff. Obviously the incels like to call me a white knight. I don't really care. And I don't really... And I'm not doing it in a sense of like, I think women need me to defend them. It's more of just like, stop being a dick. I got bullied my whole life, and it really bothers me when, because it's almost always, when losers want to put down other people just for enjoying a hobby, yet all they do is whine about people picking on them for enjoying that hobby. And so that really bothers me. I obviously have daughters, and like I don't want them to grow up in that world where they get bullied for liking something that may not fit the norm of what society has deemed okay for women to like. So I talk about it. That being said, the reason I'm saying that is because now as an adult, I go back and look at the way I would talk to some women, and oh my God, I was that creep. I was that creepy guy that a girl would be nice to me and I would take that as flirtation. And they were just being nice to me. And then I wouldn't get the hint that they weren't interested. In my defense, obviously I'm neurodivergent. I don't fully understand how people react. And the non-neurodivergent like to speak in code. They can't just tell you, no, I'm not interested. They'll come up with excuses. And I get it. They don't want to hurt your feelings or whatever. And my feelings would have definitely been hurt. But I just really didn't get it. And so like I would still pursue, even though now as an adult I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I've learned so much, and they so weren't interested, and I wouldn't drop it. So it's like, yeah, on the outside I look like Rico Suave, but the second I tried, I was like, whoa, crap. Where did you come from? I just watched a stand-up thing actually of like how it was a guy talking about how like women, I don't want to, I'm going to try to quote it. It's not my words, and I'm not... Please let me finish before you think I'm trying to, like, put down women. But he says, women know when they're ugly. And so, like, they will not hit on a guy because they're like, I'm too ugly for him. I'm not going to hit on him, and that's it. Whereas men, this is where the joke was, is men don't realize how ugly they are. And they'll, like, hit on a woman, and she'll say no. And then he'll show up 10 minutes later and still try to hit on her. And so like his whole joke was like, he'll come up to a girl and be like, hey baby, you want a drink? And then she'll be like, no, thanks, I've got one. And she'll walk away. And then like 10 minutes later, he'll like slide up between her and her friend and be like, so you up for that drink yet? And it's like, she just said no to you because she's not interested, because men are too stupid to realize how ugly they are. That's who I was. I obviously, like, if they were flat out no, I wasn't gonna like push it, and I wouldn't like get mad if I got rejected. I would get embarrassed and my feelings hurt. But I'd be more of like, oh, I'm gonna run away and never talk to you again because I'm so embarrassed. I wasn't like, well, screw you, I never wanted you anyway, because I always thought that was stupid. But that's who I was. So it's like the outside world would be like, oh, he's Rico Suave, he was a ladies' man. But every other lady would be like, no, he was such a creep and weird. Because I'm so creepy and weird. Oh, man. Hello, Gina, how you doing? Big sexy hot. Oh man, yeah, it was bad. It was bad. Yeah, I was, and it wasn't in my defense. Now that I've kind of put myself down, in my defense, I didn't do it because I thought that I was like amazing looking and that no woman could resist me. I also didn't do it because, you know, the thought of somebody rejecting me was unfathomable, or that because I thought that I could convince a girl who didn't like me to like me. They just needed to give me a chance. It wasn't that. It was just I couldn't read the cues. I just didn't see it. But that's just the norm in my life. The amount of times I've done like interviews and I haven't shut up, and now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that poor interviewer just wanted me to leave. Or like I did auditions and it's like the director just wanted me to walk out of that room and just shut up, and I didn't. Even 2 days ago, I got to work and the guy that was closing the store, he was there, and I got to work like 25 minutes late and he was still there. And he's like, yeah, we still have a customer. And then I started like, not customer bashing, but like talking about how when I used to work retail, we would have a lady that we called the 9 o'clock shopper, because she would show up at 8:55 p.m. We would close at 9 p.m. and she would expect us to do her shopping for her. And it wasn't like, oh, I just need batteries real quick. It was like a full-blown shop. So she'd be there for up to 40 minutes after we were closed. It was crazy. And I'm saying all this as the customer is standing right there. And now that I think about it, he probably, like the guy that was closing, wanted me to shut up because I'm making fun of customers that do this, as the customer who is doing this is standing right there. And it just didn't cross my mind because I just don't read social cues. So that's my defense. I wasn't trying to be creepy, and I wasn't like doing it in a way that like I was owed something. I just didn't pick up on it because I'm an idiot. Because I'm an idiot. Oh, man. It's on sale on Steam. I'm not going to buy anything right now, Ewan. I'm not going to buy anything because I want to... I want to save up for Resident Evil. I also want to save up for the PlayStation VR 2. And right now, the game that I'm looking at to buy is actually Sons of the Forest. If I do buy anything, I really want Sons of the Forest. Yeah, Gina, that's exactly it. It's the hide behind the computer, put people down because they enjoy something, and it's easy to do when you're just hiding. We have a different ghost. So I have two ghosts. This is... Okay, I've been wondering this for a few days, because I know Ghost has a display picture, like you've got a channel with a following, but then the other ghost showed up with no display picture, and I wasn't sure if it was just chat that was not showing me the display picture, and I was still talking to ghost that I know, or if it was a different ghost. And especially because you used my name, I wasn't sure. Now I've got that clarified. Okay. You pre-ordered it for your birthday? Nice. Have you played the demo? Did you play the demo yet? Picky Brainer, hello. Buying games on sale, then forget. Oh, me too. Me too. My Steam library, I think, is like 240 games, something like that. I've maybe beaten 20 of them, maybe, if that. My VR titles, I've got like over 20 VR titles on there, and I've beaten 2 because I'm so bad at beating the games. But when they're on a good sale, I can't resist. I just can't resist. Just admiring the scenery. That's one of the reasons I want to play it. The scenery looks so pretty. I really like the Forest 1. I haven't beaten it. I restarted it recently to play it in VR again. And I spent maybe 4 hours in VR playing it. I built a little base and did nothing. And I've never gotten into the story. So like, I'm guessing I've heard in reviews that the Sons of the Forest is a little bit more guided, so you can get into the story a bit easier. But I'm okay with just wandering around the forest because they did such a good job with the first one. I'm sure this second one is just very immersive. I wish it was in VR though. It is good, Ghost. I initially was not interested. Not at all. Because they've released that stupid game. I'm going around in circles. I'm literally walking in circles. They released that stupid game on like everything that could run it, right? And so for me, it's like, okay, you guys have done it enough. Like, I don't want to play it again. When they announced it, I was like, I get it. They're revamping all of them, but like, does that really need it? And then I saw the first commercial for it, and I was like, okay, that's definitely looking a lot better. It's definitely darker than what I was expecting, and I'm very interested. And then I saw another commercial, and I was like, okay, yeah, I really want to play this. And then I played the demo last week. They did a really good job. It's got much more of that. Oh, this is where I died. I got poisoned last time and died. They got more of the Hollywood aesthetic when it comes to the way they've written it, the way that the cinematography works. It's less campy than the original was, but it still pays homage to all the original stuff. There are certain lines from the original game that are still in it, but they've mixed the way that they say it. And I'm trying not to say too much so I don't wreck it, but I think they've done it justice. I think they did a really good job. From what I saw in the demo, it is going to be a better response than Resident Evil 3 was. And Resident Evil 3 was good. It just wasn't, I think it didn't do it justice. It felt like DLC versus a full game. This one feels like it's going to be a full game. It was really well done. Yeah. Oh my God. I did Resident Evil 2. I did the first run as Claire on like the normal difficulty. And then I did the second run as Leon in the hard difficulty. There was a time where I literally spent half an hour just sitting because I was so scared of Mr. X. They did such a good job with him. And I feel like they've done something similar with this when it comes to like making things scarier. One of the comments I made a lot was that the zombies, the I don't remember what they're called, Las Plagas or whatever, they feel more like zombies. The first one, they felt more like robots. They didn't feel like zombies. It was one of the reasons I didn't like number 4 as much, was it felt less zombie-like, and I'm in Resident Evil for zombies, not for bug people. Whereas this has more of the bug feel and more of a zombie feel. I have very high hopes for this game. I'm even to the point where I'm debating whether I should buy it when it gets released or wait till I get my hands on a PSVR so I can like fully experience it in VR and have a completely terrifying experience. You'd get super sidetracked. That's what's happening to me. Is like I'm spending my whole time just like building stuff and not actually looking for the story with with the original Forest. Yeah, Ghost, non-display picture Ghost. I'm not of the fandom that thinks number 4 is the best. I think number 2 is the best. I think 4 is good. I didn't like how it went action. But that's just a personal taste. I much more preferred the B scary movie alone in a hallway, and the zombies you did face were very hard, but you didn't face very many of them, versus a whole bunch of zombies and just having less equipment to deal with them. I'm not a fan of the more action-oriented Resident Evils, but it was still a fun game. This one, I think, struck a much better balance of still being very action-oriented, but having a lot of the scary feel to it. So I feel like I'm really going to be on board about this one being one of the best. Because I'm really enjoying it. And graphically, it's very pretty. So I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited. Why not both? Oh, no. Okay, so my brother bought Outbreak 1. Was it Outbreak 1? I want to say he bought Outbreak 1. I saw him play that one. I never, ever experienced Outbreak 2. I never actually played Outbreak 1. But funny you should mention it. For like the last 2 weeks, I've been running around at work, just like watching shows and stuff. And all I keep thinking about is how I really wish I could play Outbreak. Because I just want to experience that game. And I don't know why. I just feel like it looks like it would have been a really fun game. And I feel like it was an underrated game that just came out at the wrong time. that it would have done better now versus then. Uh-oh. So I'm like wandering around, and I'm now in an area that I've been in, so I don't think it was worth coming here. Oh god, run! It's the most nostalgic for you? Yeah, Resident Evil 2, that's one of the reasons it's my favorite. It's the most nostalgic for me. It's what actually introduced me to the whole, like, obsession to zombies. I had heard of zombies before then, but Resident Evil 2 was the first time that, like, I really became obsessed with zombies. And then after that, I found all of the Dead movies, and I became obsessed with those, and then just, like, anything zombie related, I was absolutely obsessed with. And then The Walking Dead came out. I still remember when my brother told me about that show. He's like, have you heard of The Walking Dead? And I was like, no. He's like, let's watch it. At the time, we were still living at home. And we downloaded it. I mean, it magically appeared on my hard drive. It just happened to be in a folder called uTorrent downloads. And I watched the first 3 episodes. And during the first episode, I still remember sitting with my brother. We're sitting in the dark. We had, like, put pillows in the window so it would be dark, so we'd be scared. We're sitting in the dark. And I thought it was a movie. And I even said to him, like, is this a movie? He's like, no, it's a TV show. I was like, no way. And I lost my mind about it. And then at the time I was doing a musical, and there was a kid in there. A kid, because he was like 17 or something. And he told me it was a comic book. And I couldn't believe there were comic books that were talking about zombies in the way The Walking Dead did. And so, of course, they magically appeared on my hard drive as well. And then I read every single comic over and over again. I think I've read every issue up until issue like 108 at least 4 times. Just a show about zombies was mind-blowing to me. And then I got my zombie tattoo, and I've got like zombie memorabilia behind me. Resident Evil 2 was like the open gate for that, so that's why that's one of my favorites. But Outbreak, I thought it was a really cool idea. I haven't watched it yet. I haven't watched the last season yet. I watched the season before, and so Alana and I would watch the show, but she is very much the type of person that likes to watch shows over and over again. And, you know, the time that would go between seasons, she wouldn't remember the details and she'd want to start again. Her and I don't really spend time together anymore. And so we had watched like the first 2 episodes, and it was always like, we'll watch it together eventually. Now we don't spend time together. So like, I haven't gone back to it, but I really want to, because I want to see what they did. I want to see where it ended. I was having a hard time by the end of it, just because there were enough changes from the comics that I didn't enjoy, that it was getting harder and harder for me to watch the last little bit. But I still want to see what happens, because I'm invested now. You can't see it on camera because it's blurry, but is it that one? No, it's over here. You can't see it on camera. Can you see it in this one? Maybe you can see it on this one. My big head might be in the way, though. Whoops. You can kind of see it. That shelf right there. One fell down, but like that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's one that fell down. It's like at the back somewhere. Those are all Walking Dead action figures that I found at like a thrift pawn shop place that does a bunch of video games. That's a whole bunch of action figures from The Walking Dead. This is from The Walking Dead. I opened it because I like to keep things in boxes because they look cool, but I like opening them because I like to like put them around. So I couldn't resist, so I opened this one. But yeah, and then oops. And then over there you can't see it on camera. Can you? It's right there. You can barely see it. It's kind of blurry, but that is my Walking Dead crossbow. Oh, you're on TikTok. You can't see it on TikTok. You can see it on Twitch. It's my Walking Dead crossbow lamp. So it's Daryl's crossbow as like the stand, and then it's a lamp, and then at the top it's got a picture of Daryl and it says The Walking Dead. That's another one that we found at that thrift shop. Is a love-hate. I'm glad that they wrapped it up properly, because I know a lot of people were starting to really, really dislike the show by the end of it. Like it started to get really bad reviews. A lot of people were like, I was all about The Walking Dead and now I hate it. And so like, it was almost disheartening to see kind of what was happening. Like I personally felt that the Negan saga dragged on for a bit too long. I think that's what kind of threw a lot of people off. It was just, it went on for too long. And in the comics, it was nowhere near that long. And some of the sagas were a lot longer in the comics and they weren't as long in the show. So I feel like the balance was a little bit off, but it was really disheartening to hear how many people were just falling off the bandwagon. And I was like, but it's still like you why? I don't want it to go down the wrong way. So it's nice to see that that it ended in a good way. That makes me happy. Are we talking about Jack, who was the moderator, the young guy? Is that the Jack we're talking about? Story, you don't get poisoned. You just watched the last season. I am watching Fear the Walking Dead right now. Ginger, I actually haven't heard from him. I thought he had come to the stream one time, but it turned out to be somebody totally different. But I haven't heard from him. My guess is either he unfollowed just because I had stopped streaming, and you know the last thing I had said is I probably wasn't going to start again. Or I know he was just finishing high school and stuff at the time, so he may be off in college doing something, or I know he was like struggling with finding time to watch streams because he was just doing so much with his life. So maybe he's just too busy to hang out. I don't know. I haven't heard from him in a while. Stiff upper lip. Only the first 2 seasons are good. I think it went on for a little bit longer than that it was still decent. I thought the rest of the seasons, like the later seasons, they were okay. Like, I don't think that they were bad. It's just, there was stuff about the writing that I, one, didn't agree with. And two, it almost, the zombies took a back seat. That was the biggest thing that I noticed, is the zombies kind of became like background props versus like the reason of everything. And I get it, like a lot of The Walking Dead in the comics too is about exploration of people and like who really is the dangerous one, the zombie or the person. But the zombies are the way that people are when they're like camping with mosquitoes. Like mosquitoes, yeah, they can be really dangerous. They're incredibly annoying. But when you're out camping, you're just like SWAT and you keep talking. You don't think about it. And it was the same with the zombies. It's like, oh, we're here to collect some food. Oh, zombie. Okay, so let's go collect that food. Oh, you sprained your ankle. Oh no, you might get bitten. Don't worry, I stopped them. And it's like, oh, that like real fear that you felt in season 1 and 2 was really diminished. That being said, obviously in real life, we do the same thing, right? Look at COVID. Go back 3 years, and I still remember how freaky it was because I worked in healthcare. I was not one of the people that was, you know, having to stay home most of the time. I remember driving at rush hour and seeing like 2 cars on the road and the road's just totally empty. 2 years on, obviously there's a bunch of factors and everything, but 2 years on and nobody even takes a second thought of it. I don't want to talk about my opinions on it because I was a healthcare worker. That should tell you enough. And I left healthcare because there were enough people that thought they knew better than healthcare workers. That's what I'll say. But now people ignore it. So it'd be the same thing with zombies. We would all be terrified for the first little while, and then eventually we would almost grow accustomed to it, even if life sucked. So obviously it was very authentic in that aspect. But I do think it went on for a lot longer. I think some of the relationships also really hurt the show. If you haven't read the comics, Andrea was what Michonne became. And I just felt Andrea fit better than Michonne did. I just never found it believable that Michonne and Rick would have been together because their personalities, I just didn't feel had chemistry. They were both, I don't know, it felt like they should have been partners, but not romantic partners. Like they balanced each other out, but I didn't feel the chemistry there. Whereas like the way Andrea was written in the comics, there was a lot more chemistry there because they balanced each other out in a more emotional way. Whereas I felt Michonne and Rick balanced each other out in a power struggle. Tyrese, I hated what they did to Tyrese in the show, because in the comics, Tyrese was much closer to what Daryl was. Tyrese was Rick's right-hand person, and Tyrese balanced out Rick when it came to like staying in control, and they were best friends, and like and they did Tyrese dirty in the show. He just became fodder. Like he was this weakling. He wasn't what he was in the comics. I think if they would have stuck closer to the comics, obviously people would have been able to predict this, so they needed to change it. But like, it made the characters more likable. Glenn was on point, I think. I think Glenn was very, very true to the comics, and that's why he was one of the most likable characters in the show. They did, Ghost. They did. I hated what they did to Tyrese. Like, when he came on in the show, at first when he didn't show up when he was supposed to, I was disheartened. But then when he came on, and I was like, oh my god, it's Tyrese. I can't wait for this. He's so good. And then he was just like this weak, fragile dude. And I was just like, that's... Tyrese is broken, but that's what made him so strong, is he's such a broken, fragile man that he's strong in spite of that. Whereas in the show, it was like he's weak because of it. And it's like, no, man. And like Tyrese and Rick were such good friends, and it's like, that's all gone. That really sucked. It really, really sucked. Ugh. Thank you, 5 stars. I appreciate that. We're playing Elden Ring. I don't know if you'd call it playing. It's more like me wandering around, talking and not knowing what I'm doing. Steve. New game +3. Holy crap. I haven't even beaten the game once. I don't even know what I'm doing right now. I'm just wandering around. Limgrave is where I was headed. That's where I was headed. I remember now. Oh, man. Yes. So, I liked original Carol's story arc, but not for who Carol was in the show. Who Carol was in the show was much more interesting than who she was in the comics. But what happened to Carol was still a very interesting story within itself. They could have had a character have that happen to them, not be Carol. I do like what they did with Carol, though. I think the whole arc of what she went through and how she changed and how she suffered with what she changed, or how she suffered through what she went through and how that changed her, was such an interesting story. They made her very deep, a lot deeper than I expected her to be. I didn't like Carol, but that's more of just my own personality. I don't like her personality, the way she was. But that's more of like, I just don't like that person. But she was written so well. Her arc was so much more fulfilling than it was in the comics. She was far more interesting in the comics. Yeah, I thought she was really good. Daryl was a good addition, I think. He wasn't like somebody that was shoehorned in that didn't fit. He felt like he belonged in that world. So at least they did a good job putting him in the show. You know, because sometimes shows will add new characters to mix things up, and you're just like, why is that character even there? I don't get it. It's how I felt with The Last of Us. I've only watched the first 3 episodes, so please, no spoilers. But the episode with the 2 guys, the guy from The Office and the other guy, and how they had that whole story arc, I loved their characters. I didn't like the guy from The Office. I don't think he did a good job. I don't know why people like him. I personally don't think he's very interesting to watch. I said this last time. He reminds me of Michael Cera, where it's like he's just Michael Cera on camera, and whatever show he's in, he's just Michael Cera in that show. So it's like, let's take Michael Cera and throw him at the end of the world. Let's take Michael Cera and make him a caveman, and it's just Michael Cera in a caveman world. It's the same with that guy. His scene partner was phenomenal. What I didn't like about it, what made it feel shoehorned in for me, is that was all there, and they made him such interesting characters, and then the conclusion happened. And it's just like, why? Like, I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it. But you know what I mean? I'm like, why? Why would you put me through that? For that? I'm trying not to ruin it. And so like, it's like, no, man. Oh, absolutely. Their story was 100% authentic. They were so interesting. I think that's my biggest problem, is that they were so interesting, so likable, so realistic. My dislike of the one character is just because I don't like the actor. I don't like his acting. It's very... It just felt like him being put in that uncomfortable situation rather than the character being uncomfortable with who he was. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, that is what I struggled with the character, with the actor. But the whole story arc was amazing. The whole episode was great. I cried at the end of that episode. But it was just like, why put that in there? Because as far as the rest of the story goes, there was no real long-lasting effect due to that. And like, they built it up as if it was going to be this really important thing, especially with all the promos they did for it. And so like my frustration with that character, which the whole thing which made it feel shoehorned in, was just that it, with or without it, it didn't affect what happened the rest of the story. Do you know what I mean? I wish that it would have affected the rest of the story, like that there would have been more, add those characters in, and then they now have more to do with the rest of the story, if that's making sense. Absolutely. Like I said, I liked it. It was just, what I'm getting at is, it was one of those added things that aren't part of the original story that was a missed opportunity. That's what I'm getting at. It was a totally missed opportunity of like, more could have happened. It's hard to say it without ruining what I'm trying to, without ruining the story. All right, anybody who hasn't watched The Last of Us and doesn't want to get it spoiled, I'm giving you like 5 seconds to like stop listening, and then you can come back. Okay? So I can speak openly so I don't ruin it for you. Okay, I'm going to talk. So if you're not worried about spoilers, then go ahead and listen. My worry, my problem with those characters is that you built this beautiful relationship, you built these beautiful, well-rounded characters which had so many struggles and so much beauty in their life and so much love and stuff going on, and then you kill them at the end. So it feels forced. Like, it feels like they were just added for the sake of adding new characters, but they didn't add anything to the story. They're just, why kill them? I really expected one of them to die and then the other one to survive and almost have that pain and anger be what pushes them forward and either makes them a nemesis or makes them help for at least a couple of episodes before they died. And so it was like, it just felt like that could have been its own thing, but it didn't add anything. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I mean by shoehorned in. It was just like, you added this character, but they didn't add anything to the story. They had their own beautiful story, but it didn't help in any way. So it made it feel forced. Whereas like Daryl, on the other hand, was added to the story, but he's had an effect on the rest of the story and continues to affect the story. Why did my monitor turn off? That's so weird. My monitor turned off. Huh. I can't see anything now. That is so weird. My monitor turned off. Whereas these guys were added on, they had all this great material to work with, and then they just let it go. So it was like, it was there for one episode that's it. Like, it was just one episode. So for me, that felt forced. I was mad at the end of the episode because I was like, why? Why do all of that to not take advantage of all of that? That was my only thing. I think that they were great. But it was just very... It was a long time to spend with two characters that didn't add anything to anything, if that makes sense. Yeah, Richard. But with the kid, at least that gives you more connection. That she was phenomenal. I was so mad that talent was only experienced at the beginning. Come on, what happened? Why did it shut off? What's going on? My whole monitor turned off. problem is now that it's off, I'm reduced down to one screen, and now I can't see the gameplay and chat and everything at once. The hell. But with the kid, what made sense with that was hold on. Even like the ding 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 isn't happening. What happened? My whole monitor died. Well, that sucks. I might have to stop streaming. HDMI 1, HDMI 2 DisplayPort. Turn on. Please? Something? Anything? No signal. I don't know what happened. That is so weird. I'll have to fix it. With the kid, at least there was the justification of this allows you to bond with the child so you can relate to why Joel is so bitter and so hurt and so devastated by what happened. Like, we all know that losing a kid is obviously one of the worst things in the world, but this allowed us to also feel that loss. Whereas like those two guys, they didn't, the one guy didn't like Joel. I don't remember their names because I'm really bad with names. The one guy didn't like Joel, so it's not like they were trying to justify Joel's loss. Joel was very standoffish with them, so it was like there wasn't that justification. The car, yeah, they got car and supplies, but they could have just as easily gotten it from like a safe house or just found stuff along the way. So there wasn't that justification. The one guy didn't really learn a lesson by the end of it, as far as like with Joel. So it was like there wasn't that justification. It just felt very like all this beautiful stuff just for no reason. You know what I mean? So the storyteller in me is like, but why? Why include it if it's not going to be used? That was the only thing. Outside of that, I think that they were really well written. Really, really well written. I thought the way that it was paced was beautiful, because by the end of it, you could feel that they had lived a lifetime. It didn't feel like, oh, here they are, now they're old and that's it. You felt like, no, time has gone by. They've got their quirks and they've learned to, appreciate each other for their quirks and all that. Whereas some shows, they try to like fast forward a relationship and it just still feels very rushed. This felt very well written. It was beautiful. I just wish more would have happened with it. That was the only thing. Oh, man. Ah, okay. I missed that detail, Ghost. But yeah, that was the only thing. And what I'm getting at is not that I didn't like those characters or I think the character shouldn't have been in there. It was just when I talk about like shoehorned in characters that sometimes script writers or directors put into a show, sometimes it just doesn't work, or like it doesn't add anything to the story. They're just there for the sake of saying I did that. And as an artist, that bothers me so much when you just add something for the sake of adding it. One of my friends who I did a few shows with and he directed a couple of shows, one of his big pet peeves on stage is watching people enter and exit the stage, just entering and exiting without a thought as to where they're entering and exiting from. Sometimes you'll watch shows where people just kind of walk off left stage, but then they walk in on the right stage and they like, it doesn't make sense because like they were in their bedroom. So why did they walk in through a different area? Whereas like he was very much, no, that's where the bedroom goes. And then this is where the kitchen goes, even though nobody's ever going to see those. He wants that because he wants the story to feel solid. So that's one of my pet peeves is when you see directors add something just for the sake of adding it, but it's not actually adding anything. It's just for them to say, yeah, I did that to make it different. That's, I think, my big pet peeve. I was watching a thing about like Spanish and people talking about people who speak Spanglish in movies. And I always found that it was very weird when I listened to people talking Spanglish in movies because nobody talks that way. But I didn't know why, because I have friends who speak Spanglish and Spanglish exists. But I was like, what is it about Spanglish that we use? And even the Spanglish that I think about is in Spanish. Like I'm speaking in Spanish and I'll throw in English words as I'm speaking in Spanish, or we'll use English words with a Spanish accent to replace our own Spanish word. One of my best friends, his mom used to make fun of me because in Spanish, the word basement, a lot of places in like El Salvador, Mexico and stuff don't have basements. But our word for basement is sótano. And, but in El Salvador, a lot of us use the word beshman, which is like a bastardization of the word basement. Beshman. It's not actually a Spanish word. It's just us mispronouncing an English word. So she would always make fun of me because I'd be like, yeah, it's in the Beshman. And she'd be like, oh, Beshman. It's sótano, dummy. So that's the kind of Spanglish I would use. But this woman brought up this video where she was talking about why it sounds so stilted. And the reason it sounds that way is because we don't just use one random Spanish word within a phrase. We will say a full phrase in Spanish in the middle of an English conversation. But non-Latino people, like people who didn't grow up in the culture, you could be Latino, but they grew up, surrounded by people who were all, American. They didn't grow up in that culture, so they don't have the fluidity that we do. So it's very stilted to us the way it's that they speak. So people who are writing Latino characters will throw in Spanish words, but it doesn't add anything to it, and it's done wrong. And so it's like that. It's just kind of the same situation here where it's like where directors add a character and it's like, yeah, you added them, but what did they add to the story? Like, where's their importance? You know what I mean? So I think that's what bugged me. Yeah, we win. That's exactly it. I liked them. I wish there was going to be more about them. I really thought that one of them, I actually thought that the bearded guy was going to die. And then the guy that was in the hole, I don't remember their names. I thought that he was going to be the one that was going to become hard because of losing the first guy. And like, that was going to make him this like gruff, who the first guy was, who the end of the world guy was. And then he was in a wheelchair and I was like, oh, okay. So now we're going to go with this guy and he's going to become softer. He's going to almost become more gruff, but at the same time, he's softer. And then they both went and I was like, oh, okay. So then like, what? Maybe he's going to be infected and something will happen. I don't know. And then all of a sudden it just ended and I was like, oh, so why did this happen? Like, that's what I was left with. That's what I was left with. Yeah, we don't say anything only because I only watched 3 episodes. I haven't watched after that. So I'm really excited for the rest of it. But yeah, I'm going to stop streaming because I don't know what happened to my screen. I don't know why it stopped working. I'm really, really frustrated that it stopped working. It was already faulty to begin with. I actually was using, did it not switch? It switched, right? I was actually using a portable monitor for streaming, but it's like 14 inches. It's really tiny. So I brought out my old beat up one. Clearly it called it quits now. So I have to put out the portable one again. Oh, well, what can I do? Kind of stop the stream halfway. I'm sorry, everybody. All right, I'm going to stop. I will be, I'm off camera. I don't have my OBS on screen. That's why I can't even see when I'm on camera. Okay, I'm on camera now. I will be live. I don't know. I just unplugged all my cables and I plugged them back in, but it didn't do anything. The monitor's on. I can see that it's on. It's just not responding. But it had been acting up a while ago. That's why I started using the portable one, because this one would randomly disconnect. But I thought that if I just used a different cable, it was going to be okay. So I swapped out the cable, but it was still randomly disconnecting, but it wasn't very often. But this time it just disconnected for no reason, and now it's completely off. And the little light is on telling me it's on, but it's not picking up a signal at all. And my computer isn't recognizing it. Like normally it does like the ding, 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 and I can see the screen flash. It's not doing any of that. So I'm guessing maybe the motherboard is dead inside, or like the input is actually faulty. I'll try a different input and see if that'll fix it, but I need to get a different cable and stuff. But yeah, I will. I don't know if I'll be live tomorrow. Maybe I will. It depends. Depends on how I feel. I'm really tired today. But maybe I'll be live tomorrow. If I'm not live tomorrow, I'm definitely going to be live Thursday. And we will play some Dead Space. Maybe I'll be live tomorrow because I missed last week. So maybe. Yeah, we win. And that's I'm using a display port on this one right now. So I'm going to try HDMI next time. The problem is that this monitor is a 4K monitor, but when I do HDMI, it only does 30 hertz. And it only does 60 hertz with DisplayPort. It's one of the first like 4K monitors that was out when they were like less than $1,000. So the DisplayPort is the only one that does 60 frames or 60 hertz at 4K, which is why I use it, but that's what's faulty, I guess. So I'm going to try HDMI. I might have to just put it down at 1440p. The monitors are the same size, so it's not a big deal, but kind of sucks. But I'm gonna see. Maybe we win. I don't know. We'll see how I feel. Like I said, I'm really, really tired today, and I have to work really late tonight. But maybe, because I missed one last week. For those who were missing me on Friday last week, I didn't stream Friday because I got to sleep at around, oh God, it must have been around 5 in the morning. And then Alana turned up the heat. And the thing is, this house is very uneven in the way that the temperature works. The actual like heating unit is right below where I'm sitting. And so the fan blows the hardest right here. And then the back end of the house is the furthest away from the heating unit. And the back wall has no insulation. So it's very cold in that back room. And so she turned up the heat to a reasonable 72. I don't know what that is in Celsius. I'm sorry. Our thing is in Fahrenheit. But 72, which according to some people is really cold, but for us, it's a decent temperature. But 72 over there makes it like 80 out here. So I woke up at like, I went to bed at like 6. I woke up at 9 in the morning, literally dripping in sweat. My bed was wet from how sweaty I was because of how hot it got in here. And so I got up and I turned off the heat, but it takes like over an hour for this room to cool down. So in the hour it took for it to cool down, I was wide awake, but I was way too tired to stream. So I was like, screw it, I'm not streaming. So I didn't stream. And then I got sick the next day because I got locked out of my room. Let me tell you about the lockout and then I'm done. Oh, good, we win. Good. 22 Celsius, it's hot. So mind you, when it's really cold outside, 72 degrees is okay. We keep our house at 71 and it's chilly. Right now it's warm in this room because of the computer going, but it's chilly at 71. But let me tell you about what happened, why I was feeling really sick a couple of days ago. If you didn't see my now, I felt really sick a couple of days ago because I got locked out of work. It was -1. No, it was -3. -3, I think, outside. And I was at a restaurant and there's a lot of like houseless people that hang out there because there's like a little awning in front of the door. But the last few times there's been a guy who hangs out there who gets very aggravated and yells and screams. And so when I'm working, you keep the door locked. You don't want some random person walking in, especially because it's like a plaza and all the lights are on and by myself. You don't know if somebody's going to walk in and try to, mug you or something. So I keep the doors locked. And it was a snowstorm. The back door is got a push bar. But it's one of those no handle on the outside and it's where the dump is. And so I was taking out the garbage. I wasn't going to take the garbage out because of the snowstorm. And I was like, you know what? I've got a little bit of time. It's not super, super snowy. I'll just run out and take it out just so I don't get in trouble in the morning. I open the door. I take the garbage out. As I'm walking back, I am literally 3 feet from the door and one gust of wind. There was no wind. It was a big snowstorm, but there was no wind. One gust of wind slams the door. My keys inside the store. Front door locked. Back door latched, no handle. I'm in a t-shirt and I got my pants rolled up and I am dripping in sweat because I've been working. So I am wet outside in a snowstorm in a t-shirt in regular like running shoes. So my shoes are now soaked. I walk all the way around the plaza. There's like 7 or 8 stores that I have to go all the way around to get to the front, all in snow that hasn't been cleared. There are people outside that are plowing the snow. And I walk up to the one guy who's riding like a lawnmower with a plow on the front. And I'm like, hey, do you happen to have like a pry bar or something? I'm like, I got locked out. I had just talked to him earlier. He saw me walk out of the store. And I'm like, do you have a pry bar? He just looks at me and goes, and then there's a lady that's plowing the snow manually. And she comes up, she goes, what's wrong? I'm like, I got locked out of the store. I'm like, I can't get in from the front because it's locked. I'm like, and the back, I can't grab a grip because there's no handle, so I could just pull it open. And she's like, she's like, why don't you go ask the guy? And she tells the guy in the lawnmower to go ask the guy that's driving the pickup truck. And he goes over there, comes back, doesn't even look at me, looks at the girl and goes, I don't know, and then just drives away. I'm like, what a jerk. I moved my car so it would be out of your way so you could clean the snow, and now you're being a jerk to me, but whatever. So she gets me in her pickup. We go to the back with a screwdriver. I try to open it, and then we realize that the latch is locked. There's just no way I'm getting in. My brother lives about half an hour away from the store. I don't have my phone, but I had my AirPods in my ears when I got locked out. So I get right up against the glass with my ear, like right as close as I can, and I hear it connect. So I call my brother through my AirPods. I had to wait for him for about 40 minutes because he was already in bed by the time I called him. I was outside for an hour and a half in a t-shirt in like -3-ish temperature while it's snowing outside with my shoes completely soaked. None of the plow people even like considered maybe letting me sit in their car as I'm sitting outside in friggin' t-shirt. The one lady, the one that did help me for a little bit, even she's like, it's not that cold outside. It's like, lady, you're wearing full gloves, you're wearing a full parka with a sweater and full like snow pants and boots and everything. I'm in a t-shirt and sweatpants and soaked shoes. You really think it's not that cold outside? So the next day I felt horribly sick because my brother finally showed up and unlocked the door for me. But I was outside for an hour and a half in freezing cold temperatures, soaked to the bone. And I still had to work the rest of the night. It really sucked. The next day I felt like garbage. It sucked. But that's why I didn't, post any content the last few days. I'm feeling okay today. I'm just really tired. But yeah, so the plan is I will probably be, we have it on 19, so around 66. Oh my God, that's so much colder. That's so much colder. But yeah, so I might stream tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure. We'll see how we feel. But yeah, that was my weekend. But today's my Friday. TGIT. Thank God it's Tuesday. I'm off on Friday. I'm off on Wednesday, Thursday. So today's my Friday. I'm so awkward. Yeah, so I gotta do work tonight, and then I can relax tomorrow. I'm really excited about it. Anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. I hopefully will be back tomorrow. I don't know. If not, I will be back Thursday for sure for some Dead Space at night. Or for people in Europe, it'll be in the morning. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for hanging out. I'm sorry that the stream suddenly ended. I don't know what happened to the monitor. I gotta spend some time figuring that out. I really appreciate all the support, everybody. You all take care. Have yourselves a great day. Ghost, if you're still watching, have fun at the party. Don't freak yourself out too much. I'm sure that even if you're socially awkward, you're still probably really fun to hang out with. So don't overthink it. All right, everybody. See you later. Take care. TikTok, I'll see you later. Bye-bye. And YouTube and Twitch, I'll see you later. Have yourselves a great day. Take care.